I'm calling to order the special meeting of the Board of Directors and a work session with the Fiscal Committee today, August 21st, 2019. The first thing we need to do is have member and board comments, and I'm going to make a comment, and I apologize that no, we are faster to do, but the way the cameras work in here.
Madam President?
Sorry.
First thing we need to do is adopt the agenda.
Is there any
No, I'm
way that
allowed.
those mics can be louder? Because we really can't hear you back here.
Stefan, can we make mics any louder?
I'm working on it.
Okay. I'm allowed to make comments, board comments.
I'm gonna make an opening statement.
Yes, that's what I'm gonna do. Thank you, Counselor. How many people are here for Lake Thoreau? Okay, is there anybody who's here for the budget meeting?
Well, it's related.
Yeah. No, the two, I have some people, I thought, a gentleman who showed up here early said he's here for budget meeting. So you all are for Lake Thoreau. So I'm gonna make a statement. Sorry?
I did the same thing.
What?
The budget meeting in Lake Thoreau.
Yeah, I'm here as it relates to the budget.
Okay.
For Lake Thoreau.
I'm gonna make a statement now. So many of you are concerned. Many of you are concerned about a rumor which has been circulating that the board has decided to close the Lake Thoreau pool facility. Let me be 100% clear. As of tonight, there have been no formal conversations or decisions reached by the board on any pool closings going forward. Once the pools have been closed for the season, they're inspected by staff and engineers to determine what, if any, repairs may be needed for each pool. The board is conducting a review of all amenities, facilities, and programs as part of the budget process, which kicks off tonight with this joint meeting between the board and the budget committee, fiscal committee, to ensure that RA is offering members the best services and value for their annual assessment. We will keep the community informed once we have some clear information and data to present. And I hope you all, if you want to come next time, that's terrific, but we also live stream things so you can watch it from home. Thank you.
Can you tell me your name, please?
I'm gonna get everybody to give their name.
Okay.
Okay, if we can go around and first have board members, raise your hand, say who you are and what district you represent. And we'll start with you.
Ben Ayer, at-large director.
Tom O'Karen at large.
Karen Anton, Hunters Woods, Dogwood.
Doug Britt, at-large.
Julie Mincer, South Lakes.
I'm Kathy Baum, I'm apartment representative and I'm the board president.
John Mooney, North Point District.
Aaron Webb, Lake Antelos District Director.
Okay. Eric on the phone? Treasurer Carr?
Eric Carr, at large.
Oh, you're on? Thank you, Eric. Okay, let's start with the fiscal committee.
David Kerr, Fiscal Committee, Chairman.
Ken Adams, Fiscal Committee.
Mark Stapel, Fiscal Committee.
Jill Gallagher, Fiscal Committee.
Scott Severs, Fiscal Committee.
Okay, and now staff, starting down there.
Anthony Champ, General Counsel.
Larry Butler, Chief Operating Officer.
Tom Veal, Director of Finance.
Hank Lynch, CEO.
Jessica Fuentes, Board, Legal, and Committee Liaison.
Okay, thank you, everybody. At this point, we need to, I'm sorry? Sorry. There you go. Can you guys stand up and tell us who you are? Sorry, I didn't see you come in.
Lauren Kowalski, Director of Recreation and Environmental Education.
Melissa Kelly, Director of HR and Admin Services. Anna Donato, Director of Governance and Administration.
Chris Shoemaker, Capital Project Operations Manager.
Mike Leone, Director of Communications, Marketing, and Member Services.
Okay, I think that covers it. Okay, at this point, we need to adopt the agenda for the board. The paper agenda that you have in front of you is the one, and fiscal committee, that's the one we're working off of, not the one that was in the Dropbox. Just for your information, what was publicly pushed, number one, was number 5, number 3 was number 1, and number 5 was number 4. So if I can have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All the ayes?
Aye.
Noes? Agenda's adopted. Okay, we're gonna do member comments. So I'm gonna read off the names that are on this list. If you will come to the podium, state your name, state your address. You'll have 3 minutes. Jessica up there is going to keep track of time, and we'll try to signal you to wrap it up. So the first person is Sherry McDonald.
Hello, my name is Sherry McDonald. I live at 1933 Winter Park Cluster in Ruston. I've actually been a lifelong Ruston resident, having moved when I was 9 months old to Ruston in 1971. And I know the neighborhoods and I know the communities inside and out.
Can you hear it more? I can't hear it.
Closer to the mic.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So having been a lifelong resident, I care very much about the community, and I know a lot about the different pools, the different amenities, what's being used. I volunteered for Ruston Association. And so I'm giving some informed comments here. Lake Thoreau Pool is in my backyard, essentially. It has been historically one of the most popular pools, being opened early and staying open late. In the last several years, there have been rules put into place that have forced children to not be allowed to use the pool. There are 6 neighborhoods full of children that are within walking distance of Lake Thoreau Pool who are bummed because they are not allowed to come and use the pool. They're turned away by the guards all day Wednesday, all day Friday, and every day after 6 p.m. Some of my best memories are walking to the pool with my friends. What are we doing as a community if we won't allow children to be able to walk to their pool? We have dozens of kids in Winter Park Cluster alone who have to have their parents drive them to different pools because when they get out of camp at 4, they only have 1 hour to use the pool on the days that they're even allowed to go. So if we make it black and white and talk about data, we need to look at the fact that the very people who want to use the pools are being banned from Lake Thoreau Pool. And it's not a fair assessment if that is the way it's going to be. If it's going to be a fair and impartial assessment of usage versus cost to maintain the pool, then there needs to be a 1 to 2 year period where children are allowed so that a fair and accurate number can be tabulated. So, you know, as a nonprofit association, you're responsible for holding the views of the people who live here. And I'm begging you, listen to us, because that is not what we want. We want Lake Thoreau Pool open. We don't want our children to have to be shipped by car to be able to enjoy the very amenities that Ruston was built upon. Inclusivity. Thanks.
Thank you. Judy Penniman.
I'm Judy Penniman. I live at 2007 Upper Lake Drive. That's within walking distance of the pool, and I walk there a lot to use it. Now, you refer to this as being rumors about closing the pool, but there's an awful lot of information going around, contradictory, all of it, that suggests that at least some people are seriously considering closing this pool for reasons that I don't understand. Now, apparently this has happened without consultation with the neighbors. We've had no clear information on what is being considered, why it's being considered, what alternatives are being considered, what the possible effect on our neighborhood could be. We expect and deserve a lot better than that from you guys. We value the pool and all the other facilities in Reston. This is a large part of the reason that we moved here 15 years ago. To close the pool would have a big effect on us personally, and it would have a very negative effect on our neighborhood as a whole. Now, I think, some of you I know think somehow that RA dues are expensive. I think it's the world's greatest bargain. I've looked at the prices for other pools, and they are, most of the private pools, and most of them have higher annual fees, and they have very large initiation fees or membership dues. We pay, what is it, $682 for a pool and all the other amenities. That's a large part of why we moved here. And if you start cutting major amenities because you want to save a little bit of money on assessments, I think that's a big mistake, and it's going to have a terrible effect on the community. So please find a way to keep us involved and to keep this pool open. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't want to mess this one up. Nico?
Hello, everyone. I'd like to echo and second a lot of the comments I've already heard. I appreciate the statement, the opening statement that there's no official consideration for this, but recently it's not the first time I've heard this rumor. I'm a father of a 6-year-old. We moved here about 4 years ago from Reston. I have been singing Reston's praises to everyone who would listen, and everyone who's looking to move somewhere, I said, please consider Reston. It's a great place to live. But again, I consider the pool to be one of the main amenities in Reston. I don't use the tennis courts. I use the trails, but as far as the jewel of our neighborhood, it is definitely the pool. It's where my daughter plays with her neighborhood friends. I play a lot with my daughter there. So I would second the comments we've had so far, that if there is any way to avoid closing this pool, please consider that, including raising fees. I'm sure Reston could save a lot of money by closing all of the pools, but that's not the point. The point is that it's supposed to be live, work, and play in Reston, and you start closing the main amenities, it's just going to be live and work. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is, I think it's Kramer Keller.
Hello. I did not know what to expect at this meeting. It's the first time I've done something like this. First time homeowner, moved in from DC last year in October, 1960 Winterport cluster. Love the area. Actually, ironically, lived in Reston back when I was in 8th grade, went to Herndon Middle School. One of the reasons we moved in from DC, I just sold off my last 2 businesses and was living the downtown life, and I came out to Reston, and friends and colleagues, younger folks moving in, my buddy Nico, kind of introduced us to the neighborhood. We were really excited about it. One of the things we were really excited about was the pool, and 2 weeks after moving in, had my first child, 8 months old, or 9 months old now, sorry, as of yesterday. And just set up the pool passes and stuff for him to go with the nanny. And I didn't realize at the time that he actually wouldn't be able to even go to the pool, which was a bit of a surprise to me. And as we have more children and hopefully grow in the neighborhood where we have tons of kids, I really hope that pool is still there. I'll take the president at a word that there's rumors going around, but just in case any of it is true or it's something that's looked at next year, I hope all the people that are here today kind of will help in that initiative next year and how you make that decision going forward, because I really hope that my son and other children on the way will have the opportunity to use the pool, and that Reston will be what I remember it to be back when I was in 8th grade, and the whole reason I kind of moved in here from DC. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Janet Carlton.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Janet Carlton. I live at 1902 Buckthorn Lane, which is one of the last roads in Reston, I guess, before we go and flip out to Oakton. My husband and I moved here about 30 years ago. We moved primarily because we love the outdoors. We back up to the bicycle trail. We use the bicycle trail a lot. Friends of mine and I walk the trails all the time, and we very much enjoy starting and ending at the row pool, because then we can pop into the pool after we do our walks. So I wanted to just kind of stress that that is our neighborhood pool. That's the closest pool to Hawk Ridge neighborhood. There are a couple of other pools, but this one is larger. It's more shaded. It's more nicely set up. We can do laps there. We can find shade, whatever. And so it would be very much detrimental to me and to my lifestyle and to my friend's lifestyle to not have access to this particular pool. So I know that there are some other pools. There's Audubon, but it's very small, and very often it's not available to us. It doesn't have much shade. There's another one kind of like off in the woods someplace. I don't even remember what the name of it is. I have been to some of the pools in North Reston, and they're lovely. But for me, from where I live, especially in rush hour traffic, which is most of the time around here now, it takes somewhere between 20 minutes and half an hour or longer to get back and forth, whereas I can get to this pool within a few minutes. So it's really important to me to have this particular pool because of where I live. And we did move here because we wanted to maintain our connection to the outside and to nature. I guess I want to stress that my alternatives, if you take this particular pool away, are not good for us. And I do think that part of the reason to come and live in Reston is for the walkability and the access to various things. It's not just about driving to different places, it's to be able to have the community sense of just being able to get someplace without using your car. I think also for those of us in South Reston, when I look at the pools in North Reston and I see how big they are and how beautiful they are, I would really hate for us to lose access to the ones that are close to us. I know that those are really beautiful, but once you start taking things away from us, like the pools that we can use, then it feels like our end of the community is just kind of getting gypped somehow. So I don't know how other people, thank you. Pardon me? Okay, 2 more seconds. So I think if we remove the pool, it's going to lower our property values locally. And I'm concerned about what else would be going into that location as opposed to having an actual pool facility there. So I think that's probably something, just because of other things that have been going around here. Anytime we start to talk about what else we're going to do with a location that was there for our recreation, really sets us, it leaves a bad taste. So anyway, anything that does go in there, I would like that to be in kind. So if it's not that pool, then I would like it to be something like that pool for us to be able to use. So a recreational facility or something like that. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Bob Ultralick.
So my name is Bob Latrollick. I live at 1902 Buckthorn Lane. I'm Janet's husband. She just spoke of, in fact, we lived for 30 years. And in the 30 years we've been here, we addressed lots of rumors. Rumors this, rumor the golf course is going away. There's been dozens of things. I've stood before this board many times to try to prevent rumors from becoming a reality. So when you say it's a rumor, I don't think that's just a rumor. There's too much information passing around. And we need to be here to protect what we have been paying for in our fees for the 30 years I've lived here. And a portion of that fee goes to the maintenance of the pools. That's what it's intended for. I hope that's where it's going. So it's important for us to have pools spread around in the neighborhoods because we want the walkability of this area. Those of us who've been around more than the last 5 years have seen an incredible growth. Apartment buildings right up against the road. This community is losing its image, its feel. It's becoming more like a city. And when you talk about taking away these recreational amenities, that's where we're going. And rumor or not, rumors are flying about building some apartment buildings where the pool is. Like we need more space. You're shaking your head, but again, 30 years of experience with rumors in this community, and things become reality eventually if we don't stand up here and try to protect what we want in this community. So I am in favor of the pool staying. I'm in favor of it being remodeled or refit if it needs to be. We're all paying for it. Let's use the money we're paying for it to get it done. If the pool needs to go away, please do not put any more apartment buildings in. I mean, with all the apartment buildings we have, you would think we need more pools, not fewer pools. Because the population is going to grow here, the traffic is going to grow, makes it all the more important to be able to walk to these local community pools. So please consider not removing it or eliminating it if that's where this rumor is going. Thank you.
Carol Brandt.
Carol Brandt, live at 2008 Cutwater Court in Reston. My family, my husband and I, and our children moved here 40 years ago. We use the pool. Our 3 children use the pool. Their friends use the pool. My grandchildren use the pool. I'm of the age right now that I'm not concerned about myself or my husband so much as our future generation. I see many, many young families moving in, older families moving out. Children need a place to go. The pool is a meeting place. They have turned away children. They have closed the pool 2 afternoons. This is unfathomable. I went on the Nextdoor website on the computer, and many, many people aren't on there, but the people that are on there all have given me the comments, and all are opposed to the closing of the pool for many, many reasons. And one of the reasons I thought that Reston was supposed to maintain the properties for the residents. That's one of the priorities, I believe. We strongly are against the closing of this pool. It's one of the few things that adds to the character of Reston. Please don't do it for our future generation. Thank you.
Next is Carol Mills.
As she said, I'm Carol Mills. I live at 12166 Sanibel Court in Reston, and I'm actually closer to the Dogwood Pool and the Hunter's Woods Pool, but I choose to go to the Lake Thoreau Pool because it has a hot tub and it stays open later. Yes, Hunter's Woods does have a hot tub, but sometimes I don't get home from work until 7, and by the time I have something to eat, I can't even get to the pool until 8. And the other pools in Reston close by 7 or maybe 9. So all due respect to Sherry McDonald, who spoke earlier, I do understand the disappointment that it's not available to children, but I am one who am so grateful to have a pool that I can go to in the evening that is adult swim, because there are many of us who congregate in the deep end, which is very difficult to use when the kids are at the pool. They splash, they use the diving board, and we can't use the deep end. So adult swim is something I value. And as far as I know, Lake Thoreau is the place for that.
Every pool at night does not allow kids.
Every pool doesn't allow
Yep.
kids?
There's no pool where you can take your family after 7 p.m. at night.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of that, but I'm pretty much
Not
speaking.
to, be angry, but it's not fair to families that there's not a single pool in Reston that families can go to. in the
Well, and I would like to see that there are, I would like for the other pools to be available for families, but I would like for at least one pool to be adult swim after 7 or 8 p.m. So anyway, I thank you for your time, and I hope that at least if you do choose to close a pool, you don't close one of the pools that has a hot tub.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next is Suzanne Joyner.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Joyner. I live on 2002 Cutwater Court. I moved here in 1971 from New York, and the most fabulous thing was the pools, where I was able to meet people. Brought my children and swim team, and it was just really how you got involved in the community, was the pool. Just last Sunday, our son was born in 72, and after living many years in New York, he and his wife moved to Reston. And one of the reasons was the fabulous community that it is. And last Sunday, we were at their North Shore pool, and I said, God, you know what? This is what I love Reston. And I guess I don't know. Secondly of all, I am just livid to think that I found out by rumors that the pool is going to close. What is the alternative? What's the alternative motive to this? That's very uncomfortable to me that it's sneaking up like that. Anyway, I think Reston with our pool, I supported the pools in 71 every year, and I just cannot imagine Reston without a pool. And I sure hope you all think very deeply about it. And I hope, I don't know, somebody said a pickleball court. Well, that could be, but not where the pool is. Pool is for the families and for the community. This is where we meet. Thank you very much.
Next one is Valerie Aaron, I think it is.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Aaron. I live at 1938 Winterport Cluster. I love living in Reston, and my favorite amenity is without a doubt the Lake Thoreau pool. I'm here to express my very strong support to ensure that our budget in 2020 and beyond, funded by my dues, member dues, will cover needed pool repairs, and to also convey the value of this particular pool amenity for me and many others, like so many others have spoken. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, and thank you, Julie, for our South Lakes representative, for being available for open conversations with our community in person, by phone, and in email. I really appreciate that. Lake Thoreau Pool is a unique and wonderful pool in Reston. For me, the best pool, with mature towering green trees, lovely mature landscaping and flowers. I love those hydrangeas when they bloom. An awesome hot tub with a view, a wonderful location overlooking the lake, and plenty of sun and shade depending on what you want. It's why my husband, Mike, and I are happy to pay our RA dues consistently and on time. I'm a pool lover, a lap swimmer, and I want to help figure out a way to save our pool. I thank you for your statement, Kathy. I know there's no immediate plans and no formal decisions, but I do believe there have been furtive, at least not public discussions, to replace our pool with something less desirable, but easier on the budget. Maybe something more of a moneymaker, but not really a valued member amenity. And that's just not okay. If there are challenges in maintaining the pool, the correct next move is to be innovative on how we can save it and make it better. So to me and others who love this pool, even a hint that this is a possibility is alarming. And I want to talk about the rumors. So there are so many repairs needed, no way it can pass inspection in 2020. So please consider this a formal request to see that list of repairs and estimates. It's underutilized. Actually, I see lots of people there frequently, and oftentimes people parking overflow on Upper Lake Drive. And if usage is a criteria to evaluate what pools stay and which go, I want to make sure that that data is valid. Often the electronic checker has been broken. Someone's not there at the desk. Broken bottles prevent the pool from being open, and schedule changes not allowing kids definitely reduces usage. So So I personally want to make sure any criteria used in the upcoming reserve study are fair and based on, and not based on inaccurate or skewed data. And I want to ensure that those that are hired to conduct any kind of studies are not predisposed to a certain outcome. So I, for one, will be scrutinizing this. It's falling into the lake. I've seen no evidence of this. This is a formal request for a report based on that rumor, if there is one. And is it from a reputable structural engineer or firm? I want to make sure any work done is objective and, again, not predisposed to a certain outcome. And lastly, it's getting too hard to hire lifeguards. Is the same process being used over and over? Let's try something, more creative approaches. I want to suggest that we consider volunteers. I'll raise my hand to volunteer if that's going to help save our pool. I'll be a lifeguard. I'll do whatever it takes. And I do want to say that, because this is not just me, but I'm frustrated and angry, and I think others are too. A beautiful new R-rated facility was built. I don't use, healthy salaries are paid, the lake houses are purchased for millions with conflicts of interest, and no member input or approval on that. All this has happened in the last few years, and now our beloved pool is potentially at risk, rumor or not. It's just not right, and I hope you'll join me in finding a way to ensure our budget ensures this unique and beautiful pool can last for at least 30 years or more. Thank you.
Mike Aaron.
Hello, thanks everybody for letting us come and address you. I am also here about Lake Thoreau. I love it. It keeps us healthy and happy. I've met friends there. It builds community. It's an excellent facility and resource. But I'm kind of like shocked and sad and alarmed that even the possibility of it being, the alternative uses are being considered for that place are even rumors. And like the other gentleman said, rumors have a way of nuggets of truth and manifesting. So I'm pretty concerned there. I also read Fatima's article in Reston Now that some board member has berated the pool as falling into the lake, and I don't really see that. I don't. But so yeah, like has been requested, maybe some sort of documented structural engineer report would help calm down or explain or provide some good info about what's really going on there. A lot of people already said a lot of good stuff. I think I'll say, the Upper Lake community as a whole, that being houses on Upper Lake, Great Meadow, Winterport, Lakeport, feels a little bit under siege or something. There's overflow parking from Metro, there's big buildings planned, there's gonna have stormwater implications, there's break-ins on the road, and now the pool is going? Like, this is alarming. So, I think that's about all I have to say. So please, help us. Please help us. We want to keep our pool. We want to keep a nice community.
Paul Lundegaard.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to address you folks tonight. My name is Paul Lundegaard. I reside and own property at 1936 Winterport Cluster near the Lake Thoreau pool. And an important factor in my decision to purchase that property was the proximity of the pool and the spa. And as a bonus, I get to live next door to Mike and Valerie, who are wonderful people and great neighbors. There are a few Reston pools with spas and none within walking distance of my house. So that's a benefit that I appreciate greatly. Closure of the pool will represent to me a substantial loss of home value and a diminution in the quality of my life. I strongly encourage the board to take all measures necessary to keep and maintain the Lake Thoreau Pool and Spa. We're not interested in alternative amenities. We like the amenities that we have. We just want to preserve them and maintain them for the foreseeable future. I've learned something about the access of children to the pool tonight that I didn't know previously, and that's enlightening. But I would observe that at present, Lake Thoreau is primarily not a children focused pool, and consequently may not have quite the traffic and numbers of participants as some of the other pools do. However, it does provide a valued resource for adults who like to swim, cool off, or enjoy the spa. And these are adults who own property, pay association fees, and vote in local elections, and I think that's important. There are ways to save and enhance the resting amenities such as the Thoreau pool. I think we just need to be a little bit creative in considering what they might be. Finally, rumored allegations of severe pool damage that Mike Aaron spoke of look to educated eyes to be untrue. And if there is some compelling study that would change our opinion about that, we'd love to see it. So we urge you to do the right thing, save the Lake Thoreau Pool and Spa for this and the next generation. And then one last thought. I recently heard from two parents in the hot tub at Lake Thoreau Pool who had teenage kids that wanted to work for the Reston Association pool system this past summer. They made applications and they never heard back. So maybe there's an administrative issue that could help with some of these alleged problems back there. Thank you very much.
Then I have a Judy Newcomb.
I'm gonna represent you, I'm John Duke. That's okay. I didn't plan to speak tonight because I spent 50 minutes talking to the design review board last night and found out I was not prepared to do that. So I didn't think I was prepared to do this, but since you're not gonna fire back questions like they did, I'll go ahead and give this a try. Military family came here in the 94 to 98 timeframe, worked in the Pentagon. Direct bus to the Pentagon, right from over here at Wheelie. It was great. The rest of it was fantastic. Came back in 2001, right before 9/11. Came here because of South Lakes High School. IB program, that sort of thing. We've lived on Lake Ann, we've lived on Tanbark, we've lived all over the place. I now live at 1938 Upper Lake Drive, and now I know where some of my mail goes. Right. And I'm a lap swimmer. I go down there too. So what do? The rest of the year, pay $118 to go to Lifetime Fitness. That's not cheap. Reston Community Center, you can go over there, you pay to go there too. So perhaps an option may be is extend the life of the pools by hiring some lifeguards, keeping them open later. I know your usage will go up. And just some ideas to look at. And if you want to throw things in the rumor mill, the latest rumor that's going around is that the long-term plan is that the quiet long-term plan is to create docks in the space where the Lake Thoreau pool is right now, like they're trying to do at Lake Ann, to rent to the people, the 20-some thousand folks that are going to live across the street there. 630 units going into Campus Commons. 6-lane highway now, it's gonna all drain into Lake Thoreau. So that's money. So for the Reston Association folks representing us here, take a look at what else is going on in the context of things. Is this, the golf course was bought by a developer? Of course he's not planning to develop it until all these places sell. Then he's got a business proposition. 630 apartments going in at the end of Wheelie. Where are all those folks going to be walking their dogs? Right down Upper Lake. Right now, it's not too bad trying to keep up with everybody that doesn't clean up after their dog because they're all neighbors and I can talk to them. What's going to happen when that happens? Lake Thoreau Pool is just one of the things that is making the community go downhill here. And
I knew I was gonna digress, and the general counsel can keep me straight from last night, and you got your 3 minutes, so. You know, a couple other things that's bothered me since we were first here in '94. Reston Town Center. Well, you know, Robert's idea was we're gonna have town centers around, several places around. South Lakes was supposed to be one of those. Right now, you gotta drive around the parking lot for an hour just to park at Safeway to get something. So where are all the people that are gonna go in, the several thousand new residents going in on the other side of Sunrise Valley Drive, where are they gonna park? Because they're not gonna walk to Safeway, okay? And anyway, so while you're looking at budgets and long-term plans, get creative to keep things like that open. We came here because of the tennis courts, the pools, and the paths, and we'd like to keep it that way. If I want to live in Boston or Osborne, I want to live here. Don't want to make it look like Boston, please. That's
Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Okay. Then you're next. Hold on, then you're next, and then the gentleman in the back is next, and then Mr. Lovis, anybody, and then the lady in the back. Okay, everybody remember the order, because I won't.
Doesn't, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I am so absolutely encouraged that we have a voice.
Your name,
and-
ma'am? For the
Excuse me?
record, your name?
Your name
Oh,
and address.
my name is Judy Nuka, 1938 Upper Lake Drive. And as I was saying, I am so encouraged by neighbors, residents, that we have a voice and that we don't hesitate, whether it's rumor or not, to find out what's going on. As a member of RA and resident of Upper Lake Drive, where Lake Thoreau Pool is located, I am appalled to hear, rumor or not, that the pool will be closed for the 2020 pool season. I would like to know why it's going to be closed and what other pools are also planned on being closed. It is imperative that RA members be advised of these events and able to provide input on the future and use of pool property. I believe it is more than appropriate that residents are given the opportunity to provide input into the future use of Lake Thoreau. As elected board members, you were voted in to represent us. How can you possibly do that if we do not have awareness or a voice in alternatives being considered or planned, rumor or not? These discussions that are currently being had should be vetted by RA members and residents. They should be open, they should be inclusive. We should have prior knowledge of what's going on so that we're not listening to rumors, because we have to trusted RA member on the boards. It is my understanding that RA, as it has been said, is currently in the process of conducting a review of the overall community use of pools and other amenities, preferences, and interests, as well as reviewing use data regarding the usage of pools this season and previous ones. Based on that review, the board will decide whether or not to invest in a renovation of Lake Thoreau pool property and budget for age-related maintenance or consider alternative uses of the spaces, which, rumored or not, includes a park with water features, which would not require lifeguards, so that's taken care of. A recreational area with more passive games like bocce ball, a therapeutic pool, a dive feature, an improved lake access point for non-lake RA members to bring their hand-carried boats to all lakes. Purchase of lake sailboats for sailing school in the lakes. As you conduct this review and look at alternatives, the following should be taken into account so you have the correct data
Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap up.
to determine these alternatives. Most importantly, if you're to maintain the integrity of the fragile ecosystem of our lakes, we need to understand plans and alternatives for stormwater runoff from the Campus Commons development and Sunrise Valley Drive expansion to be dumped in our Lake Thoreau Lake at the dock below the pool parking lot. As a concerned RA resident, I ask that you consider and respond to these concerns. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Juszczyk. I live at 2010 Upper Lake Drive. And in trying to prepare for the meeting, so I was traveling this week, so I was trying to do that online, and just a few simple requests up front is on your website, can you update the timeline for your budget process? I know the fiscal committee gave you kind of a little bit longer to get them a first draft, but I don't know when that date is. And in previous years, when the community members submitted things for the budget, we had a running list that kept getting added on the website, so you could kind of see what other community members were requesting and either applaud their efforts or respond in kind. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see a demographic study considered by the board to put into the budget process for next year. As the community has been talking, we're gonna get an influx of different community members, some in the RA, homeowners association, and some not. And they're gonna affect our community, so I would love to see something like that in the budget. I also, Hank, want to applaud your efforts into looking at non-dues or non-assessment income options. I would love to live in the community a long time, and I think that our assessment incomes are going to increase as this population changes, and we're going to need those types of new revenue opportunities. And kind of like Mr. Iyer, who is very fiscally conservative, I can tell from watching the board meetings, I think that they certainly need to be looked at from a making money standpoint. I think sometimes you have to spend money to make money, but I would love to see some of those new ideas come to fruition that you guys were presenting. I love that you make these meetings available on YouTube. I watch them all the time from home, and the fact that you guys are so open, I think is something that you should applaud yourself for, because that information is out there if you want to find out the information and what you guys are doing. And so I applaud that, but I can tell maybe an education campaign is needed because the information is there, but it's not being pushed, it's not in your face. You do sometimes have to go and find it. So maybe consider something like that, because when it comes to the pool, I've seen for the last 3 years, the finance committee and the board discuss the pool situation in Lake Thoreau and that it was going to close. That's not new news to me. It was certainly a concern of mine, but it wasn't new news. So when Julie sent her email to the community this past week and engaged with members, that it was surprising for them, it wasn't surprising for me. So that there's kind of a gap, I think, somehow in getting the information out. And when it comes to the pools themselves, and this is my last point, I have a 21-month-old daughter. I'm willing to drive to a pool. That doesn't bother me. I think that we're very lucky to have 15 pools in Reston. And when Melissa is recruiting for the association, I'm in HR. I know what it's like to find people. It's near impossible right now, and salaries are increasing. And the association needs to do the same for staff in order to keep good staff. You guys have had some issues with staff turnover, I've seen it. And we need to pay good staff in order to have good resources in the community too. So putting efforts towards that, I would applaud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Begary, and I live in 11435 Great Meadow Drive. I don't have a statement prepared, but I felt like I need to speak out. Reston is about look and feel. It's our house doesn't end at our border, right? My wife has a joke every time we turn from Reston Parkway into Sunrise. She goes, we entered our driveway. I've been in Reston for quite a while. I might look young, but I'm not. I got 2 kids. We lived in Sanibel for a while, and now we're in Great Meadow. And over the years, I've seen things change. Like throw a pool, for example. You go there, and first we have the cards, and then have the pictures, and waiting for the retina scans now. And then so it's for example, and they change the hours that allow the kids or not. And I appreciate some pools need to be for adults. I completely agree with that. But went there and the lifeguard didn't know let us in, and then we get a call that we'll call the cops on you. So we're leaving. So Reston has always been about feel of the place, right? The people who set up Reston were not ill informed, right? So if you had a certain number of pools or tennis courts or whatever, right? And back then, I'm sure we had less of a population. Your jobs are not easy, right? If it was easy, anybody would do it, right? So it's difficult to find to figure out how to do this, right? I'm part of this because all these pools are going to become end of life at some point. Forget the road, right? So what is the plan that when all these things become end of life, right? Money should be saved. Have a schedule of when these things are going to hit end of life, and money goes to the side that, okay, this pool needs to be rebuilt, fixed, or whatever, right? We have to maintain our home. We maintain our specific home. If it becomes a place that you don't want to live anymore, you don't know your neighbors, we don't have to be efficient and do just because you can't do something, do it. No, sometimes it's good to be inefficient, but maintain a happy environment. So I hope we do the right thing.
Next. No, it's over on this side, John.
John Lovis at 11437 Washington Plaza in Reston. I'm going to change the subject. I don't feel my pool's in jeopardy. I think if it were at Lake Ann, I'd probably feel the same way these folks do. I have a couple of concerns, actually they may be better stated as clarifications I'd like to hear tonight as you go through the budget process. A couple of questions on budget. I see your aquatics budget is going up from something like, it's going up about $195,000, $200,000 from 2018 to 19. And I don't know what it's going up to in 2020, but I'd like to know that as well. That's a major increase. If it's to get more lifeguards and have the pools covered, I'm probably okay with that, but I'd like to know what it is. Management services, something else I'm probably it's gonna take more to convince me it's okay. We're talking about an increase of $224,000 from 2018 to 2019, and I don't know where the heck that number is going in 2020, but I'm concerned that's a 50% increase in 2019, and who knows for 2020. I'd like to know why that's necessary, what we're getting better out of management at RA. The other concern has to do with Lake House. At Lake House, when we had that controversial vote on that, we were told, for one thing, it would be a great community asset and the community would get to use it. That's what I'd like the assurance on in your budgetary process. I hear the talk about non-assessment revenues, need to increase them, and let's get some really cool corporate lunches and high dollar weddings at Lake House. And I think that's kind of neat, but it's not very responsive to the community. It's not what you told the community you were going to use that facility for. I'd like to know what amount of time you have available for nonprofits, charitable groups, community groups that don't have much income and what their rates will be as you go through the budget process. So, anyway, thank you very much for having this open access to be able to talk about this and to having it on YouTube. I think it's a good thing, and that RA does some really good work when they open up these processes to the community. Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Jill Norvell. I had no intention of speaking tonight. I have no idea what I'm going to say, but thank you for the opportunity anyway.
Jill, can you state your address?
Yes, it's 2123 Cabot's Point Lane. And this pool is not in my backyard, but I have been swimming, well, I've been in Reston since 1971. I've been in every pool. I can't even tell you how many times. I'm obviously a member of the choir. I'm an avid lap swimmer, and I may be late to this party because I only heard of this meeting through Facebook and whatever social media there was. I have heard the rumors. I have no idea what the facts are. I don't know if this is a done deal. All I can ask is, or perhaps say is there, what do you need from us? What can we do? How can we keep this pool in this community and keep the RA board as a member service driven organization providing services to members, not only to the choir, but to keep this pool open. When I started swimming, I looked good in a bathing suit. That's not the case so much anymore, but I'm still out there. I'm out there at 6 in the morning, and I may or may not use my 3 minutes, but right after this, I'm going right down to Thoreau, and I'm gonna do my laps. And I schedule my day around the 4 hours or the 3 hours coming next week, that the 2 pools are open for lap swimmers. The services are wonderful for the short season that we have in Northern Virginia. I know that you do everything you can to keep it extended, so I'm not complaining. I would love more, but I certainly implore you not to make it less. And so, happy swimming, thanks for what you do. Go Cavaliers.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Grant. You heard from my wife earlier. We live at 2008 Cutwater Court. We moved here, the previous speaker moved here in 71. We must have bumped into her somewhere along the way. We moved here in 72. I must say, I sat back there and didn't think about saying a word, but I think this meeting is absolutely pathetic. Where in the hell is the enthusiasm that used to exist for Reston? It seems like all we do anymore is to try to fight to keep people from taking things away. We fight for the golf course. And there's a little old swimming pool right down from our house. There's some tennis courts right up the street. When the hell are they going to go after those? And I believe that they're going to come after Lake Thoreau and try to drain the lake so they can build a bunch of high rises so people can run over to the I think this is sad. You know, you guys look like you're still young. You should be energetic and vital. Why don't you get up and fight for the old Reston? I went to some of these meetings many years ago, and there was a guy named Simon. And you know what, he came in these old wrinkly Bermuda shorts and old crotchety old t-shirt. I don't know when it was last washed. He came in and he fought for a tennis court. And this is the guy that founded this place. Where? Come on, guys. let's not just talk about building high-rises everywhere you turn around. What people are afraid of is you gotta go build a high-rise on that corner. How will you fit it in? I don't know. Everybody's upset because now there's gonna be a big high-rise down on Wheelie and Sunrise, the golf course. They're gonna make some more of those so-called buildings that they have across the street from it? Is that what this whole place is gonna look like? Can anybody remember what the dream was and why we all came here? Don't you guys care? I'd like to see a politician here that got up and fought for the people, fought for the ideas, fought for the concept. You're not doing it anymore. I'm sorry. You're not doing it anymore. If you're the president of CEO, you need to do it. I'm sorry.
Okay, this is last call. Anybody else? Okay.
Hello, my name's Catherine Ives, 2631.
Louder, please.
My name is Catherine Ives, 2631 Fox Mill Road. I'm a lap swimmer, so I'm just here kind of on behalf of all the lap swimmers. And I've tried swimming in just about every pool in South Reston, and really none of them are as suitable for laps as the row. Some of them don't have the L's, or some of them have lap lanes, but people entering the pool have to cross the lap lanes to get to the other pool, or if there's no diving L, then it leaves like 25% of the pool for regular swimmers, 25% for the diving, and then, a couple lanes. This is the only pool that is suitably configured for lap swimming in South Reston in my experience. So I'm really hoping that it stays. Thanks.
Okay, final call. Okay, sorry, in the back. Oh, man, sorry.
My best day. I had no intentions to speak. I wanted to hear what God said. My name's Jean Cahoon. My husband and I live on 11305 Harborside Cluster. We're just off Upper Lake. Our house is on the Lake Thoreau side. Now, I'm going to be real sweet and tell you, in the 41 years we've been here, I have never used a Reston pool. However, I consider it an essential amenity to this kind of community. You have your trails, which we use extensively. You have tennis courts, which I'm too old to cope with. But we had a lot of neighbors, in fact, people that are close to 90, who played a mighty mean game of singles tennis on those courts. I haven't heard much about property values. Well, you take Lake Thoreau pool out and you put in some kind of alternative thing, you've destroyed a lot of property values.
Yes.
My husband and I are 79 years old. We will be leaving Reston in the next 2 to 4 years because truthfully, Reston is becoming Tyson's 3 or Manhattan 4, and we're not happy about that. We're not happy about the nonsense with the golf course. We already have a hell of a time getting out of Upper Lake Drive at Wheelie, except on weekends, because of the way the lights are configured and the timers. So I say we need to look at what we're doing. The community was built with a community feel, and I'm beginning to feel like it's another city, and I'm a city kid. And I didn't grow up in a wealthy city, but we didn't have trees. Our yard was asphalt, and it wasn't smooth asphalt. So, Reston is a beautiful place. It was a beautiful place, but now it's getting crowded. And frankly, I don't mean to insult you board members, but I don't see where you're considering the feelings and the input. Now, I heard about this little rumor this morning and went ballistic. All right, it's a rumor, Kathy. but rumors have a kernel of truth. Or to use another expression, where there's smoke, there's at least a light, a fire. And that's what's upsetting me. I'm seeing that high rise, which is gonna get shoved down our throats thanks to the wonderful county and the planning committee, who's in the developers' pockets, and I suspect you guys are very highly influenced by the developers. They got big bucks and you're looking at all this money. Forget it. You're destroying the quality of life. And that's what's important in Reston. I've said my piece, and I gotta go get some supplies at Home Depot, because after 41 years, the house does need maintenance. And we want it in tip-top shape so that whoever buys this from us can appreciate the house itself and the neighborhood.
Madam President, if you don't mind, could the people that spoke that didn't sign up, please put your name and your address on the sheet so I can add that to my notes?
My sheet?
Yes. Just so I have the names and the addresses.
Do you have a pen?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna move on now into our budget work session. And at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Hank Lynch and his staff.
And I'm gonna ask Tom to share the 2019 forecast for review on revenue and expenses. If you can go to the first financial forecast, the cost center. All right, so I provided two financial forecasts reported in two different formats, one by the cost center and another one by functional expense. So I just wanted to go down on the first one, the cost center, more concerned with the expense side than the revenue side, because that piece will be budgeted out in further draft form. So if you go down to the expense, computer support.
Jessica, is there any way to blow that up?
Everyone has a copy in front of them as well.
But for those people in the audience, if you can move it up. Oh, you've got it there, okay. But just move it up just so we have the expense side showing, because that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. So on the expense side, under computer support, I'm just hitting the major variances. That amount is from unfilled positions. And in finance, same, that variance is due to unfilled positions. The management services, that difference was due to a brand marketing survey that the board had approved. And that explains the variance from 2018 to, that was brought up in the discussion. So I just wanted to point that out. Under operations, that saving of $123,000 is due to the lease.
Lease of what?
Under the operations, that variance is due to a lease.
Tom, sorry, before we go into the numbers, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. What's the difference between the budget, the forecast, and then there's an actual column? Should we really only be comparing the budget and the forecast, or?
Right. What I'm going through is the 2019 budget as compared to the 2019 forecast. And the forecast is made up of the actual numbers through July, and then forecasting out August, September, October, November, December. Thanks, I should have pointed that out.
Yeah, so it's column 1 and column 2 for those.
So it's column 1, column 2. The budget versus the forecast is kind of what I was going over. Sorry about that.
And your lease comment was in the
Under operations, yes, the signing of the new lease term mid-year provided a savings of, well, I'll get into it in another slide, but that explains that variance positive variance.
Tom, I missed your explanation of the variance in finance.
In finance, that's unfilled position.
Okay, that's what I thought, as well as computer support.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And that's the main culprit for the variance. There's other ancillary items in there, but I just wanted to hit the main things. Under aquatics, that's mainly due to labor. And in land use, that's unfilled position. In my fiscal committee meetings, most of the members there like to see the functional expense, and that's the breakdown of the actual expense category as opposed to the department that's spending it. So if we can go on to the functional expense. Here again, it's the same thing. It's the first column versus the second column. That's the budget that was approved 2019, and then I'm forecasting out with the help of other department senior leadership team. So the first item I wanted to go over, even though it doesn't have a major variance, is salary, since it's the biggest item in the budget. And now, Jessica, if you could go to my,
This is functional expense.
yeah, but if you could go to the presentation.
Yes.
PowerPoint. The first slide kind of goes through the salaries. In the 2019 budget, there were intentionally unfilled positions to offset the positions listed below. Again, it was the CFO and finance and the land planner and the land use column. And forecasted for 2019, we have a position that was filled that was not budgeted. And also there were other positions that were still actively searching to fill, but they weren't budgeted. So those two positions at the top are left unfilled to kind of offset the positions that we're seeking to fill. And then you'll see once we put together the draft one and the budget 2020, the future positions are listed below. And Hankel is given a presentation that'll explain those positions and necessity.
But the positions for the cluster outreach specialist and the covenants inspectors and the covenant advisor, we already approved those.
Yes,
to go
but
with
those will be
part of next year.
part of next year's budget, 2020. I wanted to show what's in the 2019 budget, what's in the forecast different than the budget, how those numbers are being presented, and then when we do come to the draft one, those future positions will be listed in the, as well as the ones that are actively searching to be filled.
So the 2019 actively searching, you expect those to be
In the 2020 budget as
placed
well.
for 2020?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Tom, you factored, those are from October forward?
yes. I was instructed in the forecast to include the ones that were actively searching, that they would be filled in October.
Okay, so 1 quarter's worth.
Right. So that's why the salaries expense kind of budgeted and the forecasted come out about the same.
Can you go back one slide on the social media? Is that 2 positions or is that 1 position?
There's a social media and website impact position.
It's one position.
One position.
So which one is it?
It's a social media position, and they will be also evaluating website, but it's a social media position.
So the one in future, to Jill's point, should be there?
The social media specialist is, I think they're
Starting in
duplicated.
October.
Yeah, they're duplicated.
It's 1 position.
Yes.
Just the one. It's just one position.
Carrying forward into 2020, that they're gonna
presumably be there, so there's.
We've been trying, that position's moving forward, we've been trying to fill a position, as one of the speakers pointed out, it is incredibly difficult hiring people in this part of Virginia. It's two separate positions. It is, one's,
Like it says it's two.
yeah, it's two.
You know.
Very good then.
We stand
I think I'm reading the titles wrong. One is, we're bringing on a person to do to manage the website, and then we're bringing on a social media specialist to do, basically manage our social media output. Yeah, I may not have gotten the titles correct. Maybe that was the confusion.
So, how many positions do we have today budgeted, not including the ones that were active, excuse me, not including the ones actively searching, not budgeted?
I believe we have 101 as far as salaried positions that are budgeted.
And what would this represent? What number would this represent?
In the forecast?
So you have forecast 2019.
It's 10 more employees, of which 4 we've approved, according to that.
Is that
The,
correct?
12 new. I did that incorrectly. The director of IT and the system administrator, they've been budgeted for the whole year, haven't they?
Okay.
No, that's, yeah. The sysadmin has been budgeted. Yeah, I did that incorrectly. It had, that one, the system administrator has been budgeted for the year.
When we sat through the budget last year, I believe the count that Larry had put forth to the board was 102, I thought. But I think we had something from him on 102. And then there were 2 positions that we've intentionally not filled,
Right.
which would drop you back to 100. And if I read it right, then there's somewhere around 10 to 12 then new positions on that.
Right.
Is that fair to say? So we're looking at,
But decreasing 2 as well.
right, but adding
Adding how many new
12
employees
more.
for next year? How many more slots are you doing,
Go to 110.
right? So that's what you're going to, 110, is what you're essentially saying?
Madam Chair, point of order. We're not taking questions from the membership.
Okay. I'm gonna relax that rule.
Such as your right.
Jessica, can we get this in our Dropbox at some point? I don't believe we have it yet.
I can't find it. No, it's not in your
It's
Dropbox.
not.
I just put this together to help explain the various.
Thank you.
Dave, question for you.
Yes.
This is a wish list from the staff, right? It's not being vetted by the fiscal committee. It's the first time we're seeing it in the fiscal.
right.
Well, the
That's
4
typically
It's not
be-
entirely.
the 4
a wish
DRB covenants positions have been vetted by everybody because we approved those in
Right.
July.
Well, I'm not talking about the ones that are already budgeted for. I'm talking about any new positions here.
Yeah, that's, we've
For
got 4.
2020. Well, whatever's for
Oh.
2019 is a budget neutral decision, right? You're not,
Yeah, 2019.
2019 is the budget neutral
Budget neutral.
decision that you're doing. 2020 is your wish list. It's not being vetted by anybody yet.
Yeah. And I believe Hank's gonna give a presentation on it.
Just to be clear, it's budget neutral in dollars, not in head count. Makes a big difference going forward, because you gotta pay for all that next year. Right?
In terms of the covenant inspectors, we had that discussion in fiscal around, the value add of adding, covenant inspectors, and the value add in allowing more people to package things faster for residents and, is that budget neutral? Is is there staff that will be added that we will, you know, it won't affect our budget because we'll be making money from whatever the packaging of the covenants, papers that people need that we sell. We had this discussion in Fiscal of, you know, how will that impact our budget? Like, we're showing this as two positions, and people need to understand that there was a discussion around that, right?
Yeah, and then we talked about it when we had the joint DRB board meeting, and that's when we went ahead and approved those
Just have
positions.
members here, so I was trying to
Thank
make sure
you.
people understood.
All right.
Moving along.
And then, next slide. In 2020, in the first draft, you may see health insurance increase 5%. Melissa will get accurate figures before the final draft, so, but in the first draft, I'll probably put in a 5% increase just to have that number in there. I think Melissa's actively has an RFP out to do our health insurance.
So in the 2019 budget discussions, we already approved that for next year, there has to be an escalation or an increment in employee contribution towards health insurance. Has that been factored in?
This is just the increase overall to the health insurance. Last year, you guys increased any new hires, I think additional 5% that they had withheld to pay for their costs. But I guess those are grandfathered in that were hired previous to last year when you all approved the budget. Did that answer your question?
We'll have to go back to the notes. I believe there was an escalation from 10 to 15% for 2019 and 2020 to go up to 20%. So we got to look at the notes.
I'm pretty sure you're correct, Ben. I'm pretty sure it was Mike.
Yep.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I need to, when we do the draft, I need to modify it, if that is in fact the case.
So,
but I was just making a point here that I was gonna increase the health insurance by 5%, just for budget purposes, if we don't have concrete premiums in place by the time the draft needs to be approved.
Tom, from a budget process perspective, is the intent to take the headcount information and do basically a bottoms-up budget? I mean, you've got number of people, and take those, and then you factor in health, you factor in everything else that goes along with that, salaries and everything. Are you going to build it up, or are you going to take 19 and move to 20? Just from a process point of view.
No, we actually have each employee.
So you're gonna do
we have each
a zero
employee
base added up?
Yeah, each employee and what they've elected as far as their health insurance benefits.
Good.
I mean, Melissa has that on her sales page.
Okay.
All right, next slide if there's no more. Again, under facilities, and that was the operations line on the cost center, but that falls under facilities on the functional expense. There again, the forecast for 2019 has that $296,000 savings from the new lease term. And then going into the 2020 budget, that amount would be $434,000. And then in the 2019 budget, just to throw it out there, that was close to $1 million, so that's the savings from the lease term, new lease term. And then also what this board will have to give me guidance on, or give Hank guidance on, is the tenant improvements, how to utilize those with the lease.
From a budgeting point of view, I think we need to treat this lease just like we treat triple RF. Let me explain what I mean by that. This lease is going to start out with an annual payment of around $400,000. 10 years from now, it's going to be $1 million. okay, or over $1 million. It goes up every year, okay? And it's particularly low in the early years because you get some free rent. You don't want to mess around with the assessment rate by lowering it because it's going down and then having to push it up. You want to treat it more like it's a 10-year amount. And from an assessment point of view, make it level so it doesn't affect that every year, like we do with triple RF. I think it's, in fact, it's the accounting way that's done. You know, BDO will put a fixed amount every year. I think that's something we should look at. I mean, we can certainly do some work
It's
on that.
18, it's just 18 months of reduced rent.
Right, but it's 2.5% growth every year.
Right.
So
That's
again,
the-
10 years out, you're paying $1 million. Next year, you're only paying 434. If you use that number to lower your assessment or to hold it down, and then have to add 600,000 over the next 10 years, you're gonna be raising that when
The
just
problem
ought to
with
keep
that,
it
Dave,
level.
I hope you're here 10 years from now to keep reminding the staff and the fiscal committee, because triple RF goes in a separate bucket. This thing goes into operating expenses, and before you know, it'll be lost where next year and the year after, their assessments are going to keep increasing to say that, oh, the rent went up, so we had to.
No, I understand, Ben, what you're saying, but it's a budgeting tool. You can budget knowing it's gonna be, I think, you know, in round numbers, annually, it's like 850,000 over 10 years, or something like that,
I agree with
okay?
what you're saying, we just had to.
From a
figure out
budgeting
way-
point of view, you use 850. From an accounting point of view, you use 434. It's just, but let's take that to a later discussion, not tonight, but I just think that's.
I second that.
Scott?
I second your point wholeheartedly, that because you're basically amortizing the
Absolutely.
asset. It's gonna be the expense, so yeah, from a cash flow perspective,
Right.
we're saving money now, but
It's cash flow versus accounting.
it's more transparent.
That's exactly right. But you also have to remember
I'm
that there is.
Eric.
Hi, Eric.
What was that, Eric?
Said you're right.
I'm concurring with this. All right, we can't treat this as some sort of one-off windfall.
Right.
But at the end of 18 months, after we've done tenant improvements, some of which is gonna be reimbursed, then there's gonna be the leftover amount to which we will get. That you can either use that and spread that over across the rent to help reduce, et
Right.
cetera.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, concur.
My understanding is that all the tenant improvement money can be used to reduce our costs. So we should really, if we use it for anything, we should really evaluate it as if it were any other new project and we're spending money in any other way.
Sure.
It's not, I mean, we can call it tenant improvements because that's what it says, but that's not, it's really just money.
We can use it for rent.
So we need to treat
It's
it
gonna
like
be
money
cash,
and not
cold hard
like funny
cash.
money.
Okay, yep.
Ernie?
As a last point on that, though, the reason why we want to do that, or at least the suggestion is so we're not in the position where we were last year, oh, we have $1 million expense coming through before we renegotiate. So then I understand what you're saying, but it's also that as you set all budgets, it's if and when we move or if we negotiate the lease 10 years from now, then the new number is what it is, but now we have 10 years effectively locked in. So.
I guess I have one more question for Hank is, we discussed about leveraging our staff and cross-training our staff and trying to fill in certain tasks with people already here, like we did with Tom, and he's doing great, is to try to leverage people who are here and doing good work and reward them rather than fill in entire positions, because that has been our biggest increment in expense year after year. And every time we add headcount, you know, it's a guaranteed expense for the following year. So for the next draft of the budget, I'd like to see how we can possibly do that. Because I saw aquatics coordinator, but we already have a director of aquatics, and she does a wonderful job. So about coordinator and, you know, a couple other things. Then you also had a website specialist and a social media specialist. So things like that, if you can take a look at that for the next draft, try to see, maybe roll up one or two or three of those positions to see how we can utilize our existing headcount for that.
We have actually done that, and we will continue, and I'll look further into it. I will tell you that the 4 positions that are being added in covenants, and I'll get to this when I get to my presentation, all came out of multiple meetings with the DRB and the board and with covenant staff, and outlined that if we are going to improve our covenants and DRB experience, we needed these people. And the board approved it, and those positions, while not money-making positions, at this time, are designed to address shortcomings in how we're operating. All the other positions I'm proposing, that's being proposed, other than the aquatics coordinator, which is actually an HR position. Most people don't realize that when we do aquatics, we actually are bringing in and interviewing several hundred people every season, and they all have to be brought online and handled. And while that position reports directly to the aquatics manager, they work right outside the HR office. Because there's a lot of HR steps that come in seasonally especially, you have to understand, we're not dealing with seasoned workers for the most part. We're dealing with high school people. And there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on with that. So that position was taken away in 2018 and is being suggested to be brought back in 2020 in order to deal with what is a big issue. And you've already pointed it out, and we've heard it this evening about the pools. So every other position I see here is a money-making position, other than the 4 that are assigned for covenants, but that was brought out of a need and an in-depth discussion between the DRB, the board, and the covenant staff. But I will do what you ask and come back next time and see if there is indeed some other way to do this. But right now, we've looked at it pretty hard.
Especially with aquatics, because pools are closed 5 months out of the year. So if you're having a full-time position all year, then how do you keep them utilized for the remaining 5 months?
You're recruiting all year round.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of work, and Melissa's here this evening. She's much better answering the specifics of that. I don't know if this is the place to do it, but certainly in the next meeting, we'll be able to explain that.
On the next slide, under the accounting, we had budgeted for that convenience fee, or what is essentially the credit card fee associated with utilizing that to make payments, $104,000. I forecast that to be $182,000. Most of that having come from the assessment payments. Only about 40,000 of that came from RepTrak, as far as payments made for them, which we've collected the fee against that. So the majority of that is generated from members paying by credit card their assessment fees, their assessments. So in 2020, we will have implemented member suites. And with that, we have the ability to collect the convenience fee on any type of credit card, ACH, or payments made by phone. And those are, the credit card and ACH will be on the website only if someone were to come in face-to-face, unless the board wants to.
Is that listed separately as a separate line item?
No, but it's the main difference that I'm explaining between the budget and the forecast. But I'm just saying, in 2020, that expense could potentially just go away because we hopefully will collect the convenience fee to offset the credit card fee. That's my point. In 2020, in the 2020 budget, that line item will go away.
So Tom, we've had some member comments stating that people are not happy with the convenience fee being paid for our camps, or, things. So I'd like to see that it's separated, just so we can evaluate whether or not we want to perhaps eliminate it from collecting it from things like the camp programs and,
Anything but assessment.
Right.
Yeah, everything but
Yeah.
assessment. I mean, if you're paying $50 for something, you have to pay, another $295. But I'd like to see the breakout.
Yeah, Dave Honeywell does a good job,
Okay.
on an Excel spreadsheet, accumulating all that information, so yeah, we can send that out,
Madam President, I applaud your initiative to take a look at that.
Oh, thank you, Director Iyer. I appreciate the compliment. Go ahead.
All right. Then on insurance, as everyone here on the board and in the fiscal is aware, the new policy increased 10,000 monthly. And then in the 2020 budget, I'll have that in annually, but our policy runs May to May. So that'll be a new policy, and hopefully, maybe it won't be quite as bad as far as the increase over the 2019 budget. And then under professional and technical, which on the cost side, that goes back to that management services. This board had approved a brand marketing for $157,000, and that's what caused that variance to go over. That was not budgeted, but it's included in the forecast. And then, so in 2020, I would expect the same level as the 2019 budget.
That's using outside professional services, is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then under utilities, I just noted some items that made that line item variance: cell phones, telephone, dumpsters, and water. For the 2020 budget, I would expect that budgeted item to be consistent with the forecast. For whatever reason, we tried to be aggressive as far as the budget of those line items by decreasing them, but we, however, weren't able to save the money that we were anticipating. So. And then under computer equipment, we decided to replace some aging computers and added a storage server, and then included in the forecast are equipment anticipated for the new hires. In the 2020 budget, I expect it to go back down to the 2019 budget. And then the rest of the line items, as far as the forecast goes, are pretty much in line with the budgeted amounts. So I didn't really prepare any type of analysis to report on those.
Tom, can I ask a question on, you mentioned on aquatics that the overage was due to people, I think, right?
Mainly labor, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, the breakdown, you'll see it's in lifeguards. You'll see it in overtime that we've had to pay. Water expenses have gone up, and expenses for things like chlorine have gone up. So that's where you see the increase.
Okay. I just want, hours didn't change, and the schedules, I think, stayed the same, right? 18 to 19, as far as I
think.
Yeah.
Right. So
a lot of,
Yes.
we ended up having to pay a variable rate to some of the guards.
No, I understand. I'm just saying from the hours and days and all that stayed the same. That's all I'm asking.
Right,
Full
okay.
hours
operating.
Full hours, operations, yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Water was because we had to drain the pools for some unforeseen, is that why water?
I think this water went up. Where's Chris?
Yeah, Fairfax County charges
Okay.
additional.
We had hotter days.
Yeah, it was,
for
it was.
Got 4 lakes, get it
Water
out of
went
the
up about
lakes.
$15,000. Overtime went up over 50. Chlorine went up about $17,000. Guards expenses went up about 60,000. So when you add it all up, and there's a couple other miscellaneous, it brings it to where you see the overage.
Is any of that due to the vandalism that's happened, or is that insignificant, and would it even be on that line item?
Yeah, that's insignificant. Somebody might have had to clean up, and So, I mean, that would have been minimal compared to that line item.
But that's where it would be in the.
If it was labor, yes. So as far as the forecast, unless there's any questions for me, if that includes mine.
My only last question would be from a process point of view, how often would you do a forecast? In other words, will you do, are they done monthly, then quarterly, are they done at all again? Just from a
Yes.
process point of view.
Yeah, as I did last year.
Monthly?
Monthly.
Okay.
I presented it monthly. Plus I do a cash forecast going into to the end of the year, just to show where we land.
Great.
Okay, any other questions for Tom? Okay, I think Chris is up next for capital reserve study. Except for then, there's another fire break.
Chris, how long do you think you'll be? Chris?
10 minutes, perhaps?
Oh, okay, so we're gonna do a break at 8:30.
Oh, you're talking about this one?
All right, I just want to give you guys a quick update concerning the capital reserve study for 2019. So the reserve study is finally complete. I apologize again for kind of getting it to you guys later than I had originally anticipated. This is an extremely complex study. Once it was fully assembled and actually put into report form, it required some additional corrections and modifications made to make sure everything was where it should be and lined up properly. So just want to kind of give you a few notations about the reserve study. It excludes any new assets or changes to schedules or costs for the 2020 and 21 budgets. If there's any changes or new initiatives like that, that's not included, obviously. It only concentrates on the here and now, what we have. It will require updates once the schedule and budget is set. RA's 10-year average calculation does not account for investment income and has not been included in past reserve studies, so just keep a note of that. We've traditionally not included investment income within that study. The annual contingency has been reduced from 4% to 3%, just because generally speaking, the numbers and the values we've seen from the study are falling far closer in line with our historicals. So I have a higher confidence that we can kind of bring that percentage down a little bit. And the study assumes a like-for-like replacement of existing assets in most but not all cases. There are a few situations, such as pool siding. We don't use cedar lap anymore because it's not really the best in terms of holding up longevity, a lot of maintenance. So we go to hardy plank, longer life, less maintenance, and it's generally just kind of been something we've been transitioning with each facility as they come up for replacement. So again, I want to let you all know, consider the study a roadmap and not a rule, okay? It just gives you projected schedules and estimated costs. We are able, and you should, and it's recommended by DMA, that you approach this as just kind of giving you a roadmap, and you can take multiple different paths to get to where you want to go. It's not a required maintenance schedule, okay? This will be a constantly evolving document as schedules adjust, costs fluctuate, and needs change. So as we keep going along, even as projects come up that are out of order or things were changed that otherwise would maybe adjust the schedule to kind of make the asset last a little bit longer from even operational maintenance, that will have an effect on it. And the next reserve study will be in 2024. So in 5 years, we'll be doing this again. Hopefully not quite the same level of detail as this one because it took a very long time to get this put together. So before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the reserve study results, I kind of want to go through the current balances of our RRF and our CARF accounts to kind of give you a bit of an idea of where we're currently at with our budgets. So repair and replacement reserve fund is for existing assets. That's what that account is set aside for. So right now we have about 3 million active projects. 3.4 million represents our minimum balance, which is mandated by our resolutions. 1.3 is an unallocated capital funds, and $250,000 is in deferred projects, which are just projects that we still have every intention of doing. We're just not doing them actively, so they're scheduled out, but just not at the moment. Usually they're waiting to be coincided with other projects, so that way we get better economies of scale, or it just makes more sense from a project management standpoint. The bar on the right there is our CARF account. This is for our capital asset acquisition reserve fund. This is for new things that we don't currently have. For the most part, that entire budget is tied up in projects right now. Only a small portion of it, about, I think it's like $2,700, is currently, unallocated. So it's really just from savings from some equipment we bought this year that came in a little bit lower than we had forecasted. So, going into the reserve study. So this is a graphic representation of RA's method, which is a 10-year rolling average. If you take all of the expenses that were outlined by the reserve study, and you take each one annually, average that all up over a 10-year period, you get your mark. And so each year you move forward from 2020 to 21, that 10-year period shifts 1 year down. And each year it changes a little bit as it goes along. So that red line represents that 10-year average from from 2020 to the forecast of 2029, which is the end of the 10-year. The blue line above it represents the minimum balance, which is just a 10% increase above that, because our resolution requires that the minimum balance is the 10-year rolling average plus 10%. So that's why that line is exactly where it is on top of the other one, but just kind of rolls up with it. Okay, so for 2020 it is currently 3.03 million, and for 21 it's 3.42. That is the annual contribution. The minimum balance would therefore be 3.34 and 3.76. So going into DMA. DMA was the reserve study consultant we hired.
I mean, I can ask this at the end, but I'm still struggling with the contingency, the 3% contingency. I mean, this is not a budget, but it's actually just a forecast, as we look out in the future, which is my understanding since we developed this method. Why do we need a contingency at all? It seems to me that over time, some projects will be high, some projects will be low. We're going to be, it's a living document, we're constantly revising it every year, even if not in this great a detail with a reserve study. Why do we need a contingency? Why are we adding $1 million to the 10-year forecast?
So from past experience, it's typically shown that within a reserve study, it's not exactly perfect. And especially since that a lot of our replacements are for the most part exactly like for like, but there's always some adjustments that may happen with tweaking a couple things in the scope of work or whatnot. And so that 3% kind of works in a little bit of that assumption right up front, because we've known historically that it's about a slight adjustment up, so that contingency kind of covers that as sort of just an immediate, known historical. So it's just kind of a built-in fudge factor, if you will, to kind of make sure it lines up, because that's what we've seen in the past.
To add to what he mentioned, really, Resolution 3 was put together because we did not have this information in the absence of having had a more current reserve study. And we always said that when the reserve study comes back, we will revise that to come up with something where we don't keep on adding more monies to a bucket more than what even the experts are telling us that we would need, just because we think that there's a need for contingency. So I know this is not something we're going to solve tonight, because it's been a discussion for many months that's been going on, but it's definitely something that we should discuss about, because Resolution 3 was in the absence of this information, and we should look at that again.
And I guess Chris, the point is that if we blow out on a project and we have to add 20% extra and it's a major project, we're gonna have to address that and, in terms of the reserves we have going forward anyway. So in a sense, the process automatically adjusts for whatever happened on a given project, even a major one. So it's still not, having a contingency out there is just adding a certain amount of noise that will take care of itself anyway.
Doug?
Yeah, Madam President, just a quick comment, might be relevant here. I'm preparing a document now for the end of the year on the impact of global climate change on our community. And I can tell you from everything I've gotten in the draft so far, I think a fudge factor is needed to make this conservative, because honestly, we're going to be dredging those lakes more than the current schedule.
Than we have in the past.
And the asphalt and other things in terms of the 20 to 30 extreme hot days that will be added between now and the mid-century are going to wear and tear on that a lot more. A lot of communities now are developing resiliency and adaptation plans for global climate change, and they're figuring out that historic schedules aren't good anymore. So I think a fudge factor is important.
I think the only thing I would add too is that, as Chris stated in some of his opening remarks, this is like for like replacement. So if there's new codes that are developed that are not anticipated 2 years out, whether it's county, state, federal, or whatever, or the community says, hey, while you're doing that $200,000 project, it would be great to, add 10 benches or something. There are things that happen with these projects that we can't predict right now. And I think the fact that we're able to take that from 4% to 3%, that's a start in the right direction, Ben, to where I think, you want it to go. But that coupled with what Doug said, I'd be reluctant to not include that at this point.
Any other comments?
I have a comment. My background is in capital budgeting, and we always built in a contingency because you go over. But just so you understand the other side, too, is that this is being paid for by members, and so when you build in a cushion, it's being paid for by members. So just remember that the money's coming from somewhere, and it's the membership. So that's that I think there will be contingencies. I think they always come up. And I think it's just necessary to understand whatever numbers they gave us, building it in a contingency is safe, but it comes from somewhere. There's two sides to that.
Kathy?
So I think it would be helpful if maybe the fiscal committee wanted to address that and then come back to the board.
Well, absolutely, because one of the process steps in the budget, okay, that's in the documentation already, is that we look at the RRF, where it stands, and we recommend to the board whether it's appropriate or not, based on everything we know. And we haven't done that yet because, we waited for the reserve study. So within the next 4 weeks, we're probably going to have to put a team on that, okay, to be able to make a recommendation, bring it up at our next fiscal committee, and then make a recommendation to the board on what we think it ought to be. So yes, we will be very involved in that because I think we've already have that in our documents to be involved.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, concur with Dave on that.
Glad you're chiming in once in a while, Eric.
Amen.
So going into DMA method, DMA was our reserve study consultant who came and performed the study. From their recommendation, they have a different funding methodology than ours. This is a funding methodology they commonly use in other associations, which is really an escalation. So DMA recommended that we implement a 1.2 escalation of our capital contribution, which is starting at last year 3.09 and increasing it annually by 1.2%. Now, for 2020, that's for 3.13, and then for 21, that's 3.17. And they also provide a minimum balance recommendation of 2.9. So this funding model also includes investment income at 2.5%, which our 10-year average does not compute that into it. So that's kind of the curve that it shows, and this goes over a 30-year period versus our 10. So that's why it looks much different, and that's kind of give a different escalation that we use. So when you put these two funding models side by side, you can see how they kind of imitate, but then also start to deviate. So around a 5-year period, you can start seeing that our funding model is a little bit higher than theirs. But keeping in mind, again, we look at a 10-year period, and they look at it from a full 30. So that's kind of the difference where it's at. Now, also keep in mind, in 5 years, we'll be doing this study again. And so there's a very good chance that those models could start lining up against each other, or they could even possibly expand. But really, the first 5 years is what we have in most certainty. So that's probably the part, and the fact that they're pretty close aligned with each other is a good sign. So major, pardon?
The last time we did the reserve study, it wasn't 5 years ago, was it?
Yes, it's every 5 years. That's by statute. Yep.
I didn't remember it.
So some major upcoming 2020-21 projects that are within the study include a lot of items for Lake Throw Pool, as well as a Glade Tennis Court, Hook Road, Lake Ann Canal, the website, and some document management. So these are big ticket items, $100,000+, and they're coming up within the immediate future 2021 time period. So with that in summary, RA's assets are aging but are generally in fairly good condition, are well maintained. This is from DMA. RA is adequately funded for its capital needs for the next 5 years, because really that's our highest time of certainty. Ongoing updates to this study will be required as costs and schedules change over time. The reserve study is not required maintenance or replacement schedule. Again, put that to mind. And staff will make recommendations, but board leadership is needed for major 20 and 21 projects. Any questions?
Chris, could you clarify for me which sections of the document include escalation? I understand that in the section of the document called the 30-year cash flow schedule, there is an escalation.
Mm-hmm.
We do use
an
assumed inflation rate. I'm not so sure that that is true in the component lifestyle and costing section. So when we, for example, read, as I was going through it, some costs out as far as 2055, are those 2019 dollars, or have they been escalated?
They've been escalated.
Really?
2.77% is the current escalation rate.
So even in that section?
I believe so, without having it right in front of me, but from my understanding, and I'm pretty sure it has an escalation built into it,
Perhaps
so.
we can chat later in greater detail, because some of them frankly seemed a bit low for what they were replacing, but we can chat later.
Can you go back to the slide that talked about DMA's recommendation on, I got the minimum balance contribution was 2.9, but they're that one.
You're gonna send all of this, you're gonna put it in
Yes.
Dropbox.
But they're like, for 2020, they're saying 3.13, and we currently, the resolution 3 says we need to do 3.03, right?
Yes. So there's a slight, you can see it right here, how this line is a little bit higher than ours, and then it tails off, so next year they're recommending a slightly higher contribution than what the 10-year average calls for, but then the next year it turns the same, and then the third year after that, it increases above it.
So what was the number for 2021?
For DMA or us?
DMA, I got ours.
3.167.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, what accounts for that jump in 2024? On that slide, I mean, or is it 2025? Because right up until then, and over the period until our next reserve study, we're basically tracking right along with them, and that's almost noise when you look at the difference. But all of a sudden, there's some kind of, and we're still tracking with them pretty cleanly after that. We've just added, I don't know, 5% or something to in terms of what's causing that, and is it real?
So we're still, yeah, and you can see it in this graphic right here, how you have in that 10-year period, you have a $14 million approximate expenditure period. And that's something we've been looking at, and that's really a combination of a couple things such as dam spillways. They're kept within our reserve study, but have traditionally not ever came up for needing replacement, but they're still in there just to be, as a safety net and also just best practice. So again, this is as a study, after it comes in, there's still gonna be some shifting some things around to actually match our traditional reality, but from DMA's perspective, a lot of the assets, they do go through and evaluate each and every one, but they're not necessarily crawling into spillways to find out they're in perfect condition. We do have inspections on that annually, but they're going from a general replacement cycle. So they'll put in their original, this is when this asset was installed. This is its, traditional life expectancy, and it's typically taken from an industry standard. I think spillways, some of those are like 60 years. And so they then auto-calculates, right, this is the year where you can anticipate to be replaced. And that's just kind of just across the board sort of done for a lot of those type of assets. And so you may have in years like, that year and then further down, where you have a lot of these facilities that were built approximately around the same time. And so they all kind of coalesce around the same time. And therefore you have a spike. And so that's part of staff's job to kind of take those ones that we know, such as dams, and reposition them where they will more likely actually happen. And then again, that's kind of reiterates why this is sort of a roadmap, not a rule, and that's why we have to adjust it and fix it to kind of make it fit what actually happens versus just being this is what industry says, but it doesn't always fit that way.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, move on.
That's it for me. Any other questions?
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. If everyone will hit your button, turn off the microphone? Okay, now you can go.
Okay, now we're back in session. I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about the community suggestions that have come in. And I appreciate Jennifer's comment that it should be online. We have had those online in the past, so I'll work with Mike Leotti to get that up on the budget webpage. So as a requirement in board resolution on the 2-year budget cycle, we put a call out for community suggestions, put the form on the website, put it in RA News and so forth. And this year we got quite a few. We had a lot of similarities, and you have this in your, in your packet and so forth. But I just want to touch on a few of these. And what we tried to do is apply cost to these. These are not costs based on bids. They're not costs, based on sending out RFPs or anything like that. So, because we had very little time to do this. But what we did based upon, we went to a bunch of different staff who were involved with the various aspects represented here and applied some, cost or range of costs so that the board would have some barometer to look at these. Because the request that the community has is, okay, we submit this, I'm hoping that the board funds it in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's really the intent. What are the suggestions they bring in? So, I grouped these into sort of logical areas. We had a number of comments, including the petition on tennis. And so you've got the costs there, and I know one of the questions that came up was why the huge range of costs on indoor tennis, and that's simply the type of structure that would be applied, whether it's air structure, air supported structure, a tension fabric structure like at Hidden Creek, or a permanent structure like the one that we had conceptual approval from the DRB for back in the early 2000s for the Lake Newport courts. So wide range of costs in how you actually do that.
Larry, if I may ask for your clarification
Sure.
on one thing. So the improvement of tennis courts has 226. My understanding is most of those were in one petition, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, and the improved tennis courts, so that's kind of all across the board. So a lot of people just want the bathroom access that's reflected in the top line there. Others just want to see general improvements to the courts, but it's sort of a general improve the courts. Then the nature center, that is to move the caretaker position to full-time. I want to scroll down just a little bit, Jessica. Pathways, and the ones on the pathways here were not specific to any, section of pathway. It was just sort of the general comments. And install and maintain LED lighting on paths. We're actually working with Dominion right now on the Hunters Woods lighting project to get the cost for the LEDs versus the old metal halide. So that's actually a metal halide cost. We don't anticipate that the LED fixtures will be that much different because a lot of the cost is not just, it's cleaning up the fixture, it's the running the power, it's the poles and all that kind of stuff. But when we have that fixture or the LED price, we'll certainly update that. And then the improve the trail at Pegasus Lane. That's actually just a footpath that goes down to one of our paved paths in the Glade Stream Valley, not too far from St. John Newman Church. Longer season for pools. A lot of talk about pools this evening. There's a lot of ways in slice and dice that. The board went through this exercise last year when we put hours back in. For those who were here last year through the budget process, you have an idea of, if you're going to expend, $50,000, how many hours can you get? But it really depends on the pool, how many guards. There's a lot of details that we couldn't apply here. And then the other facilities and amenities piece, the final phase of the Pony Barns project, which are the top two, that's the overlook deck over the Wildflower Meadow right off Steeplechase Drive. That actually is a known price because we had updated that as part of the Pony Farm project that Chris Shoemaker was working on. And I want to commend you on your earlier presentation, Chris. It was well done. I'm up here and have the microphone. Some of these others were, again, undefined, so there's no way to apply costs. And, without going back out to that member and specifically asking, what exactly did you mean with your suggestion? And we have not gone through that process. You got the dock and the playground tot lot over at Lake Audubon Pool and the Grass Beach. That's that cost is pretty close. That's equivalent to some of the other structures that we replace on a fairly frequent basis. This next one about the poison ivy, we're not a fan of that. We already control poison ivy where it's encroaching on our pathways and our recreation facilities, but to generally go out kind of willy-nilly, get rid of poison ivy when it's actually an important bird food, among other things, staff is not recommending that. Under the covenants, we've got, potential 2020 capital budget item, which is to finish up any of the files and includes the plat maps as well. So as you know, when they went through the original digitizing all the covenants files, that did not include all of the site plans and plats that we actually sort of inherited from Reston Land Corporation, and there's lots of those. So that's something else we'll be talking about, because there's a square footage cost to that too, in terms of the lease and the rent that we're gonna calculate out over the period of the lease. This one I thought was interesting, have some of the legal background, review and revised guidelines and forms, and I know our general counsel has worked with Anna on that already. And hire a code enforcement officer. Actually, all the covenant staff perform those duties in some way, shape, or form, and as we discussed earlier, that's being addressed more fully with the addition of additional covenant staff. We've got a new staff person already working on the corporate sponsorship. I think Hank's going to talk a little bit about that. And then expense reduction, the magazine. Mike Leone is already working on reducing the cost for that and moving that to a better digital platform. And some of these others where there were no comments, they were just sort of general comments. And permanently closed little used pool and tennis courts. We heard a lot about that this evening. And, that there's certainly a cost to that, regardless of the facility, depending on the development plan, language, and the zoning and so forth. It's much more complex than just saying, we're not gonna operate that facility. So the lake house, I again, didn't comment on those. And then general services. We've heard the second one under general services that use membership to negotiate utilities and so forth. We actually tried that. We did a pilot. We reached out to single family homes down in South Reston at the request of somebody on that street. This was a handful of years ago about, hey, let's see if we can get one trash company to come in and do trash and recycling on our whole street. So we sent letters out and said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. We'll try to kind of broker that deal. And turns out, I didn't know this, people really like their trash company. And so they didn't care that there were 3 trash companies coming down one street, different times during the week for trash and recycling. And they were like, no, I want to stay with Reston Trash, or, whomever the other companies were. So just to let you know, we had tried that. And then again, the others that were not specifically under RA's purview, that, specifically the Lake Ann Plaza area, that's not our property, bus stops, which the county does, and actually has a pretty robust program of improving bus stops. We heard that at the DRP last night, along with some of their sidewalk projects. And then start a communities advisory group. There already are those resources out there. So that's kind of our recap of the community suggestions that we received, and I'm happy to entertain any questions on these and further information, etc.
Anybody have any comments? Questions?
Larry, I would just point out that the suggestion about closing little used pools is in quite contrast to what we heard tonight from the members. So I think that shows the diversity among the communities in terms of what they think we ought to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Mark?
Sort of similar to that. Early in my tenure on the fiscal committee, we actually looked at the indoor tennis quite extensively, and I think we came to the conclusion we could probably make it be profitable. It would actually be a benefit to the overall, not only to the community, but to our budget. But ultimately, the problem is a political one that the fiscal committee can't solve, which is we have to find a place to put it. And it has to be acceptable to the neighbors and to everybody else. So obviously, if you guys can find a spot, we'll be happy to look at that and any other projects you guys can dream up. But the problem with a lot of the ideas is just how do we actually make it where we're not hurting some members while helping others?
Good point.
I would like to understand too how, if some of these things are falling in our capital improvement plan, like some of these lighting and, when are they gonna happen? If people, it's just nice to let people know, yes, we heard you and this is planned for, 2022. If it's already in there. I think, it's helpful for people to hear back from us, on what, they have concerns and if we don't, they take the time to file them, it'd be nice for us to send them back, say, yes, it's on our capital improvement plan, we heard you. It makes them feel empowered.
Right, no, I agree, and until those decisions are made, I mean, certainly the bottom ones, I think we could respond to those and say, well, it's actually not Ari's purview or something to that extent. But on the other ones, where there's actually a decision that the board has to make to include or not, I think we would wait until those decisions are made and then reach back out to them.
And the other thing I would caution on is like, I was part of the Nature Center, Friends of Reston, when it first was talking about the Nature Center, and I think that always keep in mind, it's like these capital expenses, it's so nice to get the donation, it's so nice to get the building, but you have to supply the staff, and that staffing expense is our heavy expense, and so every time we take on these new big, huge capital projects, we have these long-term expenditures that cost, members, in perpetuity. So I think there has to Mark's point, this, real thought on, expanding our capital projects and whether we as a community can afford to staff them after we build them. The number one item there is the staff for a nature center. So nice to get the capital project, but there's a long-term expense to these capital projects, and you have to really think about that.
Larry, is there some kind of record of what wayfinding signage exists on our pathways and where perhaps none is? I hear from members once in a while that there is no signage at all on some pathways. I don't know if that's.
There are a number of 55 miles of path, and I don't know the miles. If Mike Mack were here, you could tell me. We probably have, the wayfinding signs that we do have, the markers with the maps, and you are here, next number of miles to College Village Center,
right?
Whatever. I'm guessing that's probably 12 or 15 miles of maybe a little bit more of the 55 miles. But there's a lot of trails.
So there is quite a bit that is unmarked.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is really a rough guess.
Yeah.
I can find out the exact mileage.
Okay, yeah, because I would like to see something in the budget for that.
I thought we had kind of a standing line item for replacement of, the signage on the pathways in the past.
That's for the existing signage. Yeah, there has not been, we haven't put, we've just done a robust, we were able to get a bulk discount on a lot of the actual materials. And so we have recently replaced, is it the green, the pink, I don't,
One of those trails.
Just recently, or in the last 12 months, we replaced all the signs on 2 of those segments because, from the original installation, they had deteriorated. Now we're using recycled lumber, so it won't rot, and we've got better material for the actual signage piece of it. So hopefully they'll last longer as well.
Looking at it, and I've been around town a long time, and indoor swimming pool is always an issue. Indoor tennis courts, always an issue. And it's been a really long time since we've seen any kind of new amenities. I'd tell you, the last one was when mobile was around doing stuff. But I do think that it's something that you know, we're gonna have to consider, I mean, if we got an email this evening from someone who loves pickleball and, you know, wants us to get rid of a couple tennis courts and have pickleball. Well, times change, and I mean, I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but all of a sudden we have a new sport that's coming into vogue, and we probably need to really look at, we've got a couple courts now, and how are they doing, and do we need to add more, because this is the new sport that older people are gonna be playing, or younger people, I don't even know the demographics of it. But we need to think about that things have been the same for years and years and years. And I don't know, I'm getting old, but I'm all for change.
If I could just add one thing to that, I think something that a lot of people don't realize, and I use this, it's a little factoid. The last facility that Mobile, we really didn't get anything from Terrabrook after Mobile sold to Terrabrook. They did finish a pathway at the bottom of the Lake Throw Dam, but the last major facility built and given to the association. What year? I'd throw a piece of candy to you, whoever gets it.
Well, at least give us a decade, I mean.
No, that's.
1980s.
Mid-80s.
A little
Early
bit more
90s.
recent. 1994.
Really?
So I mean, think about that,
Yeah,
folks.
so.
You're not talking about Reston
We're-
Town Center, are you?
North Hills.
We're doing
North
things
Hills
that,
School and
Oh,
tennis.
right.
So that was 1994. It's about the same time really Osborne too. And, but that was those were the last major facilities that were built and given to us by the developer. So, you know, that was all great because, you know, basically they gave us everything, and our charge in our governing documents is to, you know, own, operate, maintain, and so forth, and care for those. But, so now you're 25 years removed from the last brand new facility. And so that's why, you know, we've done 4 major pool renovations as well. You know, the most recent was 2012, Chris, I think, at Dogwood, 14. So, you know, so 5 years ago was the last even major facility renovation. We're doing Northwest Tennis right now, but, so anyways, just little nuggets.
Because those clay courts, I mean, we struggled with, you know, getting those replaced and repaired. You know, they have been going long in the tooth, but they needed it, you know, and you're doing that with some of the lights, you know, where we're trying to shift over to LED lights to reduce our energy consumption. And even when we were working with the Lakes, Docks, Boats Working Group, such a hard thing that just doesn't come out of your mouth. You know, but one of the things that came out of that was people saying, well, I don't live on a lake, but I want to be able to use the lakes, you know, how can we make access to the lakes more? Or people started talking more about fishing. I mean, I was a little surprised at how many people wanted to be able to fish and how much they enjoy that fishing competition that we do. I don't even know what it's called, but I heard all about that too.
The derby.
Yeah, you know, and just like Kathy said, there's been a changing in the kinds of activities that people seem to want to do. But we're also seeing the demographic changes of neighborhoods coming back into children, you know? And so I think we have that to take into consideration too. And we've always been about being environmentally, ecologically focused, and that does mean walkability, bikes, accessibility. So it's hard, but we do have an aging infrastructure. We know that.
anybody have anything else for Larry? Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
All right, Hank, you're up.
I'm the last one. You can get my slides up there, Jessica. I think it's. Can you get it so it's a slide? There we go. Thank you. You know, my task tonight is to share with you all the 2020 staffing level supports by function. one-time major expenses being considered for 2020, and a high-level non-assessment revenue goals for 2020. But like any plan, like any budget, you have to start from goals. And so what I'm going to share with you first are the general goals that we'll be sharing with the governance committee. These are not the specific wording of them, but the general goals we're going to be sharing with the governance committee here soon. And then everything that comes up after it is based on these goals. And the 2020 budget is going to be based on these or some version of these goals. So the first one, strive, not actually do, but strive to achieve 100% customer satisfaction. I think tonight we witnessed we have not done that. 2, increase all members' property values by diligently following and enforcing DRB decisions and covenant rules and guidelines. The important piece here is increase all members' property values. That's why we exist. Ensure that sustainable business practices are applied to all resident associations' operations, offerings, and future opportunities. RA becomes an employer of choice for both current and potential new staff. And yes, our staffing is the highest line item cost for what we do. But we are a service organization, and we are struggling right now just to fill 4 or 5 positions. If we don't choose this, we're going to continue to struggle for years to come. So I've laid that out as a major goal. And they're billing, which you'll see with some of the things I suggest, based on this one as well. RA's annual revenues are expanding, becoming more diverse and focused on growing both current and new non-assessment income. We can't just raise assessments. We know we can't do that. And finally, utilize data from the 2019 brand and positioning study, and it's an important way to phrase it. This is not a community survey. This is a brand and positioning study to align facilities, programs, and services with both members' needs and wants. What will come out of this, this is the company we're working with, the brand consultancy. There's lots of components of branding and positioning. Many of you know probably better than I do. These are some of the folks they've worked with. But what we just witnessed here tonight is a brand problem, among other things. So what does your brand say about you? Your brand identity becomes what your business stands for. I hope our business never stands for this. This is actually a sign I photographed going in Washington, D.C. a few years back. It says a work-free drug place. You should laugh. It's pretty funny.
It's very funny.
I took them a while to take it down, but it's supposed to say a drug-free workplace. But I'm sure some people registered with them. And if I was in charge of the road crew with this sign up, I'd be pretty angry because it stayed there for several days before it came down. But that made an impression upon people of what they think of Washington, D.C. I witnessed here tonight a lot of distrust for this organization and for what we do. I've been here 8 months and have worked with all of you and worked with the staff. There's no reason for it. This is a trustworthy group. Unfortunately, our brand needs to be fixed. And that's what this brand and positioning study is doing, and will do. And they started about, they started 3 weeks ago, something like that?
What, today?
The brand and marketing positioning group. They started helping us about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be done by September, October. So with that in mind, the plan 2020 new staffing to support goals and functions include what we've already talked about. We had a meeting with the DRB, an in-depth meeting, several smaller meetings, and then a group meeting just like this, the DRB, and covenant staff, leadership, and other leadership, and we discovered that we have an issue when providing 100% customer satisfaction to our members around the DRB and covenants. And we learned a lot of things that were problems with that. That led to identifying that we needed 4 new positions. And the board agreed. And we found a way with cost savings that this is basically budget neutral for 2019. The problem is, we don't have the space to put all these people. So we're going to hire 1. This is being pushed back into 2020. The other one we talked about, which is not been approved by the board, which will be, you'll see in your presentation for the 2020 budget, is we need to add a social media specialist, which we already questioned me on before. Social media is the way we push information out. It might also get people to sign up for our offerings. If we're gonna do more non-assessment revenue, we have to communicate to people the better way that we're doing. Social media is how it's gonna happen. And it is, I believe, a money-making proposition. A grant writer, we do have a 501c3 arm, which is the Friends of Reston. It is not being utilized as well as it could be. We can write grants to offset operating costs. We need somebody dedicated to do this. Usually a grant writer brings in, after about 16 to 18 months, 2 to 3 times what you're paying them. So this is a leader, but will eventually bring in money for us. So that's a position we're going to be asking for. And then we also talked about the aquatics coordinator. While it says aquatics coordinator, it actually is supporting HR because we just heard pools are really, really important. They're our highest payroll that we pay for. They're the most people we bring in, and it takes us a long time to recruit them. And if you dig even deeper into this, you're going to discover that everybody's running a pool in this country is having a hell of a time because the college kids don't take the jobs anymore. It's all high school kids, and trying to get them trained up and worked up and have them work the normal hours that a college kid would do is a challenge. So you need somebody kind of doing it. And Melissa has got someone right now lined up, and she's going to do a great job for us. But this is not budgeted for 2020 yet. It's going to be in the budget. It's a new position we're asking for. So that's kind of the new positions. Any questions about new positions that I'm going to be asking for? I view them as either customer service or helping us make money. Yes, sir.
Hank, do we think we can do something about all the overtime in aquatics? Is that something that we can accomplish with some of this effort?
I hope so.
Because
I was pretty upset when I saw it myself.
that's a number that,
Yeah.
take 30% out of that in a minute if we can somehow staff it better, right? I mean, it's just, it's paying time and a half.
We have to fix it.
Yep.
And it will get fixed. I just don't have the answer right now.
It'll pay for more than one person.
Yeah, it will.
Hank, I have a question about the 3 covenants positions that we're unable to take on this year because for lack of space.
Well, it's not just space, and not as here. I'm not joking. Look, I have never experienced trying to hire people what I think are decent salaries in my life. We just think we may have the IT director, so we're going to have, in order to try to convince her, we're bringing her for lunch to meet with the entire SLT team tomorrow. So the first one decided they didn't want to work for us. I don't know if they were watching one of the videos or what happened, but they decided they didn't want to work for us. Trying to fill these positions and find a qualified person is exceedingly difficult. Anna and I talked about it frequently. This position we can fill. With some of the tenant improvement dollars, which we'll see here in just a second, we do need to fix some of the office space. We need to find 3 or 4 spots in the existing covenants department to put these people. So you'll see, I'm not proposing to spend all the tenant improvement money. Far be it. What I'm looking to do is solve a couple of problems with it. And one of them is, when we interview people, they want to see where they're going to work. Right now, I cannot show them I have a desk in the hallway. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, potential one-time major, potential and considering. These are important 2 words to throw up here. I do not want anybody leaving this room, I don't want social media, I don't want Reston now saying this is what they're going to do. It is potential and considering. I don't think I can emphasize that enough. All of these are looking at helping us with non-assessment revenue. First one, improvements to the Lake House and Browns Chapel in order to expand and continue to grow our reception and meeting convention business. Purchasing that property was a really good idea. I don't know the circumstances, I really don't know the price. it's a good business venture, and it's making money right now. We believe that there's more money to be made there, and consequently keep assessments lower, because people want it for business receptions, they want it for wedding receptions, they want it for other things. It just needs a little bit of improvement. It doesn't mean we can't let it have nonprofit businesses or corporations use it, but it's gotta change a little bit in order to make a little bit of money. And we're looking at some options there, which I'm not gonna talk about on camera right now, because they're potential, and we're still considering them. Tenant improvements associated with the new headquarters office lease. I just mentioned one. Gonna make some office space. And we gotta fix some existing office space for some of our existing staff in Parks and Recs. If you ever go in that department, I don't know how anybody gets a job done, because the cubicles have a wall this high, and they're stacked one on top of one another. There's also another room we have back there we need to fix up, because we got Chris's department and his staff. There are 3 different locations in the building. For him to have a conversation with his people, he's got to walk from the 2nd floor. One's outside Melissa's office in a hallway, and another one's downstairs outside Larry's office. It's just ridiculous. You can't solve problems like that. So tenant improvements are going to fix some office spaces. Improve, again, potential being considered. Improve a north side and a south side tennis facility by converting several courts for dedicated pickleball. We're looking at it. Pickleball right now, the way we do it is we put, temporary tapes down on the courts. We have temporary nets that we put up. Columbia, Maryland just put in 8 dedicated pickleball courts. If that's any indication, it's kind of a happening thing. I think that's one. But we're looking at this. We're going to look at costs. We're going to come back and think, maybe this is something we should be doing. Potential considering floating dock additions or existing dock improvements in order to offer new summer camps, new member boating rental, and new member boating rental opportunities. A lot of people came here tonight, live around Lake Thoreau. The majority of people in this community cannot get on Lake Thoreau. So how do we make the lakes available, whether it's Lake Ann, Lake Thoreau, whatever the lake, how do we make it available to everybody? There has got to be a solution. So we're going to be looking at potential things. And it does not include, by the way, demolishing Lake Thoreau pool and putting in a boat dock in the boathouse. That's not even being considered. But we do want to look at ideas. New RA boat and/or equipment on which to tour, experience, and take classes on Reston Lakes. We own the lakes. We have an opportunity to bring that to all of our community. So potential being considered, and we'll bring back the budget, whether we need to get some equipment to do that. It may be it doesn't make business sense, but these are the main ones we're considering right now. So let me move on to something I think that is a real issue for us that we need to think about. This is probably a confusing little schedule, but it helped me see a couple of things of what's been happening. This goes back to 2016 and talks about what our annual assessment was. In 2016, it was 657. 17, it was 692. It was dropped in 2018. It's to 682. Now it's back up to $1 to 693. What also happened, and it's important to note, in 2016, despite the fact the assessment was 657, we were operating at an assessment level of 708. And why were we doing that? Because some reason there was a decision to take $1 million in budget surplus, infuse it in the budget to keep this number low. Then what happened in 2017? 2017, the organization, the assessment was 672, but it was operating at an assessment level of 720. What happened there? Somehow, there was a decision to infuse $550,000 into the budget to offset, to supplement this, so nobody had to pay the true value. Then what happens in 2018? 429 new units are found that are going to be brought in and get added to the assessment. And then the board and others decided, again, the significant operating cuts and aggressive revenue projections. The assessment from here, not from here, but essentially really from here, was brought down $10 to $6.82. Do you know what happened here in 2018? The organization lost the most employees it has ever lost in its entire history. 25 key employees were lost. And I would suspect that an enormous amount of trust, and maybe some of the trust, the lack of trust we saw in this room earlier this evening, happened because of this. At least before it, but this played a big role in it. And then what happens in 2019, again, I didn't do this budget, I inherited this budget, I'm grateful for it. Despite what I'm sharing with you, I really enjoyed this job and I enjoyed working with all of you guys. So I think there's an enormous amount of potential here. But what happened in 2019, the rate was at $693, it really was operating at a $700 rate because it was increased by $144,000. In 4 years, the assessment rate in our operations have been supplemented by just under $1.7 million. This is what looks graphically. Graphically doesn't look too bad. This is what we charge people. This is what we actually, how we were operating. It doesn't look too bad until you get over here, and you lose everything, and up here it doesn't look too bad. It's kind of even. Except what essentially this is Ernest Hemingway kicking a can down the road. That's what it is. This is our, do you guys know Ernest Hemingway, how he actually died? This is a shot in Idaho, and I think it's probably not soon after this, he killed himself. Because kicking the can down the road never solves a problem. It just creates a problem down the road for the next people, which is, I've now caught this can, and I'm just going to try to help us stop it. Because we can't kick the can down the road anymore. This, I know, is a very confusing document. This was put together for me by this SLT team. Let me first explain a couple of things, because a couple of questions came up. This is 2019, looking at the revenue number. It does include the 693, but I got to this number simply as a simple multiplier for myself, because it takes in fees and other things that are essentially assessments. It's not non-assessment revenue that we count on. And that's why I use it as a multiplier to get to here. Because actually what this document's looking at is down here. And this is what I use to share with the staff early on why we have a challenge and what we need to do. In my opinion, we need to get this budget to a level where it's stable, and then we are looking at inflation to increase it. And we also, in order to keep non-assessment revenue as low as we possibly can, we need to look at realistic ways to increase non-assessment revenue. What I've done for this exercise and what I challenge the staff to look at is here's what our non-assessment revenue percentage is. It's 14% of the budget. A lot of detail into that. I believe that it's challenging for us, but doable, to increase that 5% over the next strategic plan, the next 3 years, which would take it to 19%. And this calculator was used to kind of show where the kind of the assessment revenue would be if we stay on our current trajectory, which is basically we average a growth of 1.5%. So the board typically approves. Over the last 5 years, that's what it's been. It's been between 1.5 and 1.8%, even though we've had these spikes. But for us to grow non-assessment revenue, in 3 years, to grow at 5%, this is the number we're looking at. It's about $1.25 million. That's the challenge I think we should be presenting ourselves with. What this all talks about is, if you go down this road, if we right-size how we do our budget, and we get to the point where all we have to do is inflation, then what you're looking at is about 2 to 2.5% annually to fight inflation, and to help support Chris and some of these other projects we may want to do. You need to look at another 0.25% or 1% to add for capital projects and capital improvements. And so that puts it at a point where you're looking at anywhere from, 2.75% to 3.5% annual increases that go forward. But right now the budget's not right. It's been supplemented. And we've got some challenges. So that's the number. Right now, I'm looking at when it comes to non-assessment revenue and how to get there after 3 years. And this is the general ballpark number I've challenged the staff with, and what you'll see with us trying to do in 2020 to reach non-assessment revenue through a variety of activities. This is a fairly aggressive plan that talks about how to win and where to play. In 2020, we need to optimize the core stuff that we do. We have camps, we have the lakes, we have the lake house. So we need to optimize, if you're looking at non-assessment revenue, things we already have. While at the same time, internally, we're starting to look at, in 2021, what are the things that we can expand into. Do we, for example, want to put indoor tennis? Can we make that work? Do we want to do an indoor pool? Is there another amenity we want to add that's innovative and different that maybe other organizations are doing? So in the next 3 years, what you'll see in the 2020 budget is we're looking at how to optimize what we're currently doing, while at the same time giving ourselves internally the ability to plan for some additional things, some additional products that haven't been done. And then also to plan for 3 years out. Is there an amenity that we need to add? Just as Kathy had pointed out, and Larry pointed out, that we haven't done since 1994. So I leave you with, let's not kick the can down the road anymore. And I'll answer any questions.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
can you clarify, I didn't quite follow you on the, you said, was it 2018, we lost a key number of employees and you were relating it to these numbers somehow. Was it some feeling that we were never gonna catch up, or what did you see as the mentality there behind that was frustrating people?
I wasn't here. I will speculate on some of the
Good point, good point.
Some of the things I saw on video, which were discouraging to staff. Some of the conversations, people deciding that they're going to look for better opportunities because the market is so strong. That's our other Achilles heel right now. It's not just hiring people; it's keeping the good people we have. And I think in 2018, based on some of the things that went on, I wasn't here, I didn't witness. Good people decided, I'm going to go look for another opportunity. And that's why you see me put up there as one of the goals. We need to be an employer of choice, both for current staff and for potential staff. It's one of the things I've been talking with Melissa quite a bit about. What is it that we can do to keep on? We've got good people here. I mean, really, really good people. I'm really pleased with this entire staff. The senior leadership team, not just because they're here, but they're top shelf. Except for maybe one guy. But the point is, we have to keep them. And if you want us to continue to achieve, otherwise we're going to continue stumbling our toes. We're not going to win the trust that we need, that we witnessed here tonight. We don't have. So I can't tell you what happened in 2018. Somebody else maybe should or could. I just know we lost 25 people in 1 year. And that's with a staff of 100 full-time.
I mean, losing people to higher salaries is one thing, but I think our reputation is we pay pretty well here in general. So,
We have just done a compensation study, which would say differently. In this current market, it would say differently. Yes, sir.
How are you proposing to budget for the 400,000 per year incremental revenue? I mean, how do we go about actually turning that from MBA speak into something that actually is tangible?
I take a little bit more time to do some serious planning. Our cycle right now does not really afford that. So you guys have been gracious to let us slow down the cycle. I've already been working with the strategy, with the governance team. I've already been working with every department how to generate new revenue. These ideas, these 5 ideas that are up here, aren't mine. I literally met with every department and every staff member had a chance to weigh in on how would you improve customer service and how would you generate more revenue. And to a T, every one of them said, we need to do more on our legs. So I'm looking at things that we can do on our legs that will have a business plan associated with them, that will take capital money up front to get started, and it will generate money. And an initial capital, it may not be that we make $400,000 next year. I'm not sure if we can. But we're gonna put a plan together that looks at how to grow non-assessment revenue as aggressively as we possibly can.
I mean, so have we identified, so we haven't identified the 400,000 for next year? I mean, I'm just wondering how aggressive should we be in budgeting for this, if it's gonna take us a year or two to actually, we have to figure out where this revenue comes from, but then we still have all these impediments that have always, I mean, it's not like it's the first time we've ever looked at new projects, there's lots of great ideas, but we still have to be able to politically or logistically or whatever, be able to implement them, which are not easy, or even
Takes
environmentally, or whatever.
It takes courage.
Of course,
just
but the
to
board
do it.
members change over too, and so you have you have the courage of one board, but not necessarily the next. And I like the way we do it, but it has its weaknesses. But the question, I'm trying to think about it from a budget perspective, is how are we gonna, if you say we're gonna bring in $400,000, I believe you, but ultimately we have to turn that into numbers. Okay, and you need to put that into a budget, and if we can't hit it next year, then that might be realistic, but we don't wanna put it in if it's not next year.
I would ask you this hard question when I give you a real budget. What I did right now is give you an overview.
Right.
So let me give you a real budget, but Kathy's spot on. If we as a collective body don't have courage, and if we don't stop taking counsel of our fears, we're not gonna go anywhere. So the time is now. I mean, for 20-some years, we haven't added a new amenity. We haven't got a clear understanding of what our members want from us. That's what this branding and marketing and positioning study is going to do. We'll have results in about three months. We'll know what they basically are looking for. And then it's going to be building also into the strategy moving forward. But we do know some basic stuff. We better not do anything with Lake Road Pool except make it better. And we also need to look at things to do on our lakes. Because there's a lot of other people, the 21,550 members, that don't get to get on Lake Thoreau, or don't get to get on. Is there a way that we can improve that? Is there a way that we can have a one-off celebration in Reston that brings in money from outside the community? That's how you make a community wealthy. You take somebody else's money and have them deposit it in your community. And so we need to look at things like that. But there's some brilliant ideas. This staff has come up with creative and wonderful ideas. I wish I could take credit for any of them. All I've done is try to facilitate the process, and we've got some really cool ideas that we're going to work on and bring back to you as part of the budget. And you guys need to do the budget thing on it. And we thought about this clearly. We've done all the budget analysis. But I'm telling you, my advice, if you can continue to supplement with found money and don't get this budget right, we're going to be in the same position year after year after year. You're going to have up years, and then you have to make massive cuts. And that's why you're not going to hear from me any of this tenant improvement money being suggested to offset the budget. You can vote on it, but it's not going to become as a recommendation from me. We need to get the assessments straight where it needs to be.
And Larry, Hank, sorry, I was gonna say Harvey. I know. Execution is the critical thing here, okay? I mean, I went through, I can understand some of that slide with the numbers on it, because I've looked at some of those numbers, and, they're comparisons to budget, okay? In each case where we set a budget that was not a good budget, we underspent, and whatever it took and we raised cash every single year, okay? We didn't spend the money. We've underspent every year for the past 5 years.
Let me just explain what I've run into. I'll just give you a basic example. I'm going to talk to my friend Mike, about my friend Mike. We were talking about putting an ad on Facebook, and he came to ask me if he could spend $250. Why would a department head come and ask me to spend $250 on an ad on Facebook? And that's just one example of many, because this staff has been trained to be ultra conservative and not spend money, because they got punished if they did. So they're not thinking creatively, they're thinking survival.
But Hank, that's not in our fiscal policy for them to have to come and ask for $250. I think you're conflating two different things.
I think asking me for $250 when it's a very simple decision that he needs to make right now.
Right, and I think that's why I'm saying you're conflating two different things. What happened in 2018 and for somebody to come and ask for $250, that's totally two different things.
That's not what the question is.
I would go to the board and ask for some, authority to grant things because last year we underspent the budget by $727,000. The year before, $288,000, okay? The year before that, $598,000. We're not spending money. It's not that you aren't given the money. I'm not talking to you personally, but we're not executing on it. Is it because people are afraid? Is there a culture that's been built? I don't know. I don't know at all.
I would tell you, yes, it's part of the culture
But
within the organization.
if we don't, all these different budgets that have been manipulated over the years, okay?
If that were true, if it was a culture, then why does our assessment keep going up?
No wonder we can't.
The surplus that you showed over there was the members' money that's in a bucket that's nowhere in our deed. We have RRF, we have CARF, ARF, and then we have operating.
Mm-hmm.
But the surplus of $500,000 on an average every year that stays and never comes back, never gets offset towards assessment, is nowhere in our deed to keep it. So it's only fair that some of it is used to offset future
Some
assessment.
of that money should have been spent to maintain service levels, to maintain and provide benefits back to our members. I mean, I agree, I don't think we should end up with this big surplus, but there were a number of years where it was back to the culture, don't spend to support.
That's completely not true. But there's $15 million budget that's approved every year, and you stick to the budget and you're free to spend it in whichever manner. The thing is, there's always surplus at the end of the year.
One of the things that going back to that first year of $1 million, I was on the committee, fiscal committee. We voted on whether to basically hand that back, or whether to issue the recommendation to the board, or whether to hand that back. And the vote was 4-3 to hand that money back to the members. But if you took out the two board members who were present in that meeting, it was a 3-2 against. And the reason it was against was not that we shouldn't hand it back to the board members or spend it on improvements, or that was up to the board. We were not really trying to make that decision as a fiscal committee, okay? But was that we thought it should be done or phased over a period of time to be more conservative, and also to reflect that some members aren't even in the community at that point. However, to your point about lack of trust, there wasn't a trust, at least amongst the board of directors, that the community really believed that we were gonna do whatever we said we were gonna do. So we do need to build that trust, and that's not a fiscal committee issue, even though I'm on it. That's a you guys issue. You guys have to figure out how to build that trust with the community. We all do, obviously, but because, and the lake house, of course, made that problem vastly worse, okay? But we need to regain that trust in our fiscal sensibilities in order to do exactly what you're saying. So we have that problem. How are we gonna get there? But we do need to start getting there. Ultimately, I still am not sure how we're gonna budget for $400,000 in extra revenue next year. I mean, how are we gonna earn that trust about $400,000 in revenue if we can't identify the projects? And you're not prepared tonight, I get it, but I'm just wondering whether we're gonna be ready for this next year to budget it into this next year, or whether it's gonna be $600,000 or $800,000 that we budget for 2021, I guess, next year. Once those have been fully identified and vetted and thought through by everybody.
The premise of that slide I showed you is ultimately that we have the budget where we need it to be.
Right.
It's not there.
So I don't see it being there either.
Once after it's there, we can start moving. And it's also just a guideline.
Right.
It's kind of like a lot of things that have been shared around here.
It's
It's a guideline of what we're looking for. We basically should get the budget at where we need it, and then consider increasing it between 2 to 3% a year to fight inflation and give Chris more money to deal with some of the maintenance stuff, as well as for us to have money to do new amenities. Because, we have 30-year-old pools, we have old tennis courts, and we have trails. They're great, I love them. I walk on the trails just about every night. They're the best trails I've ever walked on. But we do have competitors. We do have other communities. We do have people that are coming in that are proposing to do other things. And we also have younger people coming in. That's the other thing the brand and positioning study is gonna show us. They're gonna start to show us a different makeup. We have different cultures here. They don't necessarily want this, they may not want, we gotta get the information, they may not want the swimming pools like we have them. They may want something a little bit different. They may want tennis courts, and these people are also paying money. So we need to get more data and more information, but we gotta get this budget right, because otherwise if we don't, we're gonna go through this continued cycle year after year. We're gonna have a surplus, and you're gonna infuse it into the budget, and then the next year we're gonna have trouble. And I also will point out that, I will spend the money, okay? This is making this really clear. I will spend the money if it's budgeted. Because I'm not operating from a culture of fear or concern that maybe it's been built into this organization for a while. I'm operating from the first premise. I have to bring 100% satisfaction to this membership, and I have to increase property values. That's the key to everything here. And how do I get 100% satisfaction? Well, our staff has to do better. Our DRB has to do better, our covenants have to do better, and I also have to give people give them the amenities they want. And if that means they want a better, improved lake throw swimming pool, we gotta give them a better, improved lake throw swimming pool. That makes sense.
I also want to add one thing, because in that slide, it's important for you to know, because you said you were not here. In 2018, you saw that there were 429 units added. That brings in roughly around $300,000 in revenue, which would be a reduction of $30 of assessment per member. But really, the assessment went down only by $10, which means really net, we had a $20 increase in our assessment. And guess what? Those $20 were spent towards staff. So we want you to, you have to understand the entire landscape, and also the board has, throughout the years that I've been active, has every year added more money towards staff. So, make sure you are operating with a whole set of information and come back with the decision you make. We're going to be with you on that, but at the same time, it is the majority portion of our expense, and something that we have to look at, because it's for the good of this association, for the good of the staff, for the membership, all of it, because if it keeps increasing, then we're going to start having all sorts of issues because it won't be contained.
If we continue to operate the way we're currently operating, the assessment increases, I think we'll be spot on. If we have a clientele, a staff, a customer base, a membership base that are exceedingly proud of this organization and exceedingly proud of this community, and we have to increase the assessment 2% annually, I don't think you're gonna have an unhappy customer. The folks I heard tonight were exceedingly proud of their pool. They're exceedingly proud of their community. They look forward to, it builds a place for community for them. They were talking very proudly of going, I want to go swimming at night, I met friends at night, I go by the hot tub at night. Some of them want us to change the rules a little bit so that their kids can go there. So we got to change the rules. But that group was organized and exceedingly proud of their community. They weren't proud of us, but they were proud of that community. And that's what we need to build.
I think, one of the things that is, I like your revenue side. I like that aspect, and I like the core, focusing on the core services, because that is what you heard tonight. They really love the core services. I think the caution is that, we do have a track record of promising revenue and not delivering. And I think it's a really, it's a risk, because people don't trust that the money's gonna come in. And salaries, if you bump them up, that's certain. We will have to pay that if you hire those people. But projecting revenue out is uncertain. And you're, increasing expenses without a certainty of revenue. And that is where continually it turns to the membership to cover. And this, that is the track record. The track record isn't distrust from the members for no reason. The distrust from the members comes from a track record of miscalculation that they're expected to cover. So it's like, I'm for the revenue piece of your proposal, and I'm cautionary on the expense side, because we just haven't, you know this is an active area, there's a lot of service providers here, we do have competition, it is very hard to make revenue. And, if we're investing also in assets, say you buy boats, or say you buy something, and it doesn't pan out, then we're left with the assets. If you do more of a concession agreement where you have people come in and test it out on your lakes and let them provide the service without us assuming the full cost, or entering into a partnership with Fairfax County so we don't assume a full cost, that is more beneficial to our membership. Just that revenue stream just hasn't always materialized, and it's I'm all for pursuing it, but it's just, we have to be careful that we don't have so many expenses expecting to get the revenues. If they don't come, we have a gap.
I appreciate that. That's never would be our intention, nor would it be something I would do. I'll just point that potential, consider it, okay? The other thing is, we are in the wealthiest part of the country, one of the top 3 wealthiest places in the country. If we cannot find a way to make $200,000 to $400,000 in new revenue, then shame on us. That's all I'll say.
It's pretty saturated.
Well, you already need to know, we've already hired, as part of the approved plan, a corporate sales person. Now, what does that mean? That means there's probably, I don't know, $500 billion worth of net income coming in every 6 months in some of these businesses. They all have employees. These employees are all using our assets. That person's already going out to start talking to them, see what they would want. It might mean that we have to change how we do things a little bit, but there's money. There's other ways to look at this.
I'll give you a good example of kicking something down the road. I came on this board last summer, and we were supposed to get $200,000 in revenue in sponsorships. Oh, that was a pie in the sky idea. Let's take that off the table. We're supposed to reduce our lease costs. Well, we're not going to be able to do that. Well, guess what? If we had started to try and raise sponsorship money last July, we'd be a year ahead of where we are today. The same thing with the lease negotiations. I somehow got involved like last August, September, with Tony's help. It wasn't like brain surgery. That's just simple kind of stuff. But yet it was just taken off the plate last year. And I was a newbie person. I didn't know. I knew we could renegotiate a lease, but it automatically went on, oh, we can't get that money. Well, did anybody try? So that's what I mean when I see kicking things down the road. Last year, it was like everybody just kind of gave up.
I agree, Kathy. It's execution. I think the funds are there to execute, okay? And if you put a good revenue plan together, Jill's absolutely correct. The expense is gonna happen, the revenue might. But if you've got a decent revenue plan, even if it's delayed, it will come into place. And you know what? If we eat into reserves, for lack of a better word, a little bit at the end of the year, because some of that delayed, but it was a good plan, it'll take care of itself following that. But you have to build a budget from the bottom up for the number of people you need to get the job done and then execute.
I agree.
The perception of this town is that we've stripped the budget to the bare bone. We've underspent by hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. So where's the stripping of the budget? We have to spend money. You don't want to hear that from Fiscal, but within reason, you need to spend money.
Yes.
If I could amplify what David's saying, this is a customer service organization. It's the sole reason that we, it's the reason we have staff, and it's the reason staff is the majority of our expenses. It's the reason we have pools and trails and parks. He's absolutely right. We have to make bets, as long as those bets are in the spirit of customer service to our membership. There are appropriate bets to make if we have vetted them fiscally, and if we have grounded them in fiscal reality. We owe our membership honest budgeting and an honest assessment number, not one where we artificially lower it by borrowing it from previous years. We owe our membership honest accounting of our expenses and our assets and what it costs to maintain those things. And I think that's an okay thing to do. I think that's something we have stood behind over the last year. And this is our first honest budget in many years. We haven't, dishonestly lowered the budget. I think it's important to make the case that we spent money to make money.
Are you done?
Sure.
I guess I could have phrased that differently, huh?
Well, if there's no further questions, we will have a draft one budget for 2020. And I'm looking at Tom, September, what did we say? It's like sometime September 20th, we'll have the first draft to you. We're gonna incorporate what we said here, and we will defend it, and I know you guys will ask me really hard questions, I appreciate that.
It's going to go to the fiscal committee first.
Yes, here's the fiscal committee.
Okay.
18th, right?
Are these when?
When's your next meeting?
Yeah, let's see, that's, I mean, with that date, it's ready in time for the board. We will not see it before the board does on that date.
Yeah, last year we had requested that we
So-
get it at least a week before our fiscal committee meeting.
Right.
And then after fiscal committee meeting, a week after that is the board meeting. That gives us a chance to go back and forth. Because otherwise, even though you call it a draft, it's pretty much a set document for that meeting, for that iteration.
Let's see if we can fix that date, and we'll get back to you.
That'd be important, for us to have any input for September,
Yeah.
we have to have it before the 18th.
Okay, we'll work on making sure we do that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for me? I think-
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Any plan, or is there known added units for next year? Are they in your discussion?
I think we will have, we've got a, Toll Brothers project that's in construction right now. We'll have those fully incorporated. And, we got a Pulte project coming on down by the Sunrise Valley wetlands. They hope to be under construction early in the year, so it's not a lot, that's a total of about 100 units. That's what I know of right now.
And then you've got the Tall Oaks.
And Tall Oaks, yeah, I'm not sure how fast they're gonna be.
But there may be something affecting the unit.
Yeah, I would say on a minor basis. That might have 427.
Okay.
Yeah, because Toll, it's only got the one row going. They've started some infrastructure.
They're not moving along quickly.
They're not moving quickly. The Stanley Martin, they're not gonna be done infrastructure till spring.
Yeah.
That site's a mess.
Yeah, we have a few, not a lot.
Okay.
Okay, Eric? Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am,
Would you like to make your motion?
I am. Yes, I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ayes?
Aye.
Noes,
Aye.
abstentions? Thank you, Eric, for sticking with us.
Amen. Yep, have a good evening.
Enjoy the rest of your vacation.